if you know what I mean. People who believe in music are the happiest people I've
Chair, you have a live mic.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Thanks for being here. We got a little bit of business today. County Manager, let's move forward here on first order of business, Pledge of Allegiance.
Yes, sir.
How about Mr. Klatzkow, right? He leads everything legal and law. Sir, over to you.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, sir. Okay, ma'am, over to you.
Well, Commissioners, welcome to our workshop today, October 3rd, 2023. We're going to jump right into our topics. And first up, we have Mr. Jay Ahmad, who is going to be speaking with you from transportation engineering perspective on in-house versus outsourced engineering and CEI services. So with that, I'm just going to hand it right over to Jay.
Hey, Jay.
Good morning, Chairman, Commissioners. I am Jay Ahmad, your Transportation Engineering Director for the record. Thank you for this opportunity to actually discuss this topic that I spent my entire career on, in sourcing, outsourcing,
You
engineering.
spent your entire career on these PowerPoint slides?
40 years, sir.
You know what I want to just say before you speak, Jay? We don't get to hear you at the podium frequently, but we do at times. But and I know I'm speaking for everybody up here because we reach out to you a lot and we get a lot of expertise from you. That's all behind the scenes. Thank you so much for what you and your team do, regardless of what we're hearing today and whatnot. But overall, there's so many little things that are happening all over the county, and I know all of us count on you and your team and your always your sense of urgency, detail in an email, going back directly to a citizen with a deep dive explanation. It's noticed and appreciated. And so I don't think we get to, see you at the podium frequently. So the fact that you're here and you're about to go through something, like you said, that you've spent a lot of time on, not only this, but you're an expert, a subject matter expert in the area. Thank you so much. We're very fortunate to have you, on the team. And I know I speak for everybody here. And if any commissioner has a personal, anecdote or anything you want to tell about Jay, or if I'm wrong, maybe you want to say something, Commissioner McDaniel. Is there something that you know about Jay that you want to share and get on the record?
I'll keep the secret.
I figured. But thank you so much, sir. Really do appreciate all your expertise and all your efforts.
Appreciate that introduction, sir.
Yes,
and
sir.
I hope I can be worthy of that compliment. And
We'll let you know at the end.
with me, I'm not the only person that have that extent of experience. I got Marlene Metsam, Matt McLean, Matt Thomas, John McCormick, and a few others, experts in different fields of utility, and it's one team. We rely on each other for all functions. I may be at transportation, but in transportation, we will need utilities. We will need certain things from construction inspection and CEI and so forth. So the topic is fitting because I believe this topic should be discussed, and we have discussed it at the board and throughout my career, 18 years with the county, several times. This is not the first time we've actually have done this subject. And we've actually do in-house and outsource at the same time. So we, for example, Vanderbilt Beach Road Extension, all CEI functions, with exception of verification testing, is done by your in-house team, your engineers, the project managers, and inspectors. Largest construction projects in the county's history, with in-house being insourced to save, and the cost was a factor in making sure that we do it in-house. So I'm going to get into my presentation, and I hope I'm not too wordy, so if I am, please stop me. So today I have three sections I'm going to discuss and have a conversation with you about, is the capital improvement projects. This section is essentially your Vanderbilt Beach Road Extension, your Veterans Memorial, your Collier Boulevard. Those are the large projects, Wilson, and mostly roadways and bridges, some utilities. In-house, the design. And that section A, is essentially going out to consultants and procure a consultant and having the outsource, the engineering part of that project done by consultants. The in-house team, which is a very small team I have under my shop, is that does very kind of traffic and safety improvements. We need a left turn lane, for example, I think we've done this in every district. Randall recently and 8th, for example, Commissioner McDaniel, there is a need for a traffic signal and left turn lanes, right turn lanes. So in order to get very direct and quick construction, you don't go through the procurement. We have in-house engineers that sign and seal design plans. It doesn't need many disciplines, but we have a small section that does those kind of functions. And finally, I will be talking about construction engineering inspection. This is a CEI. As I mentioned, Vanderbilt Beach Road Extension has a team of 7 people that does the project management and the CEI. And I'm going to start with the first section, Section A, the consulting and what do we decide when we go out to outsource. The photo in this slide is Veterans Memorial. We just recently finished it. It's a roadway to the GGG. It has a name, I think, Rogers High School, something like that. This roadway was needed for that purpose. And of course, it serves a few, the Sequoia and elementary school. This is a capital project. It was budgeted for about $10 million. it has intersection traffic and bridges. We went out to consulting. This is what I'm talking about when we talk about capital projects in this section. The team that does the CEI, the design, they go out and procure the design, is Marlene Messam leads that team as a supervisor. 5 licensed project managers or engineers undertake that effort. At this slide, I'm going to stop by saying we are governed in the project management by the CCNA in designing in getting consultants. The CCNA is the Consultant Competitive Negotiation Act. Essentially stipulates that you can't just go and bid out consulting services. You must go through a procurement process and you see it come before you, a ranking. We advertise out with an RFP for a project like this, for example, and we get consultants interested in that project, and they get ranked, and from the ranking, we come to you, and you get to approve that ranking, and we follow up with. You allow us to negotiate, and these project managers essentially go on and negotiate a contract with the selected, consultant. Sorry about that. So once we have a contract, we bring it to you, and you approve the contract. We take on that project. Becomes from, we have a scope of services in that contract. We have what are we buying for a design? We buying having to design a highway, getting in through several stages, 30% public involvement of that project. We go through a 60, apply for a permit. If there's a need for right-of-way acquisition, we go through that process. Finally, this team get 100% permitted, all the right-of-way acquisition through a condemnation or through negotiations acquired, and they send it to construction. The construction team picks up, and the CEI, which I will talk about later in this discussion, will carry, we call it a handshake. We literally hand it over to a project manager in CEI, and they take on the construction management and the inspection. And that could be done by in-house or CEI. In-house outsourcing. Okay, now you've seen this several times, our 5-year work program. And in that, literally, I added the numbers, and our 5-year work program is close to $500 million worth of projects in all over the county, in each district, literally. The Wilsons, the Everglades, the Goodlet, you name it, all these projects. So this becomes the basis of what our work program and what we do, finding consultants to design those projects. And, from that, we take on, project managers schedules it. They schedule the projects for all the phases using Microsoft Project, essentially a programming of what event happens when and how long it would take. And we stipulate in the contract that, for example, a designer would have 1.5 years or a year. Usually the permitting and right-of-way are the duration that take longer. And then we send it out to construction. But these are a sample of what we take that capital program and we program it to delivery and production. I'm going to start with an example. This is actually Vanderbilt Beach Road Extension Phase 2, not the Phase 1 that we are in construction on. It's taken and it's an example, it's taken the project from where Phase 1 ends at 16th all the way to just east of Everglades Boulevard. And it's approximately $20 million in construction value. It has one bridge, similar in nature as the Phase 1 design. And we just recently gone through negotiations with a consultant. And the reason I'm bringing that up, in every proposal that when we request for proposals, a consultant or several consultants would submit what their staffing and how they're going to do it, what the critical issues are. And this happened to be one of the international, multinational, in every city almost, Kinley Horn was the selected consultant. And we negotiated a contract that we hopefully bring it toward this end of this month or maybe early November. I'm shooting for this month. But these are the expertise that are required to do that project. You look at this, and you see the highway, not alone the project management of the project, you see the highways, the utilities, the environmental, the drainage, the traffic signals, the maintenance of traffic, the permitting, and all of these, the surveying, all of these services are a system of engineering expertise that you need to produce this project. You can't, for example, you can't complete the project without surveying or knowing what the geotechnical for the roadway and the bridges, or a highway engineer or a bridge engineer or a permitting guy. So these are all the expertise that they proposed. Even with such large firm, the expertise always not enough. For example, in the yellow on the bottom, they still need sub-consultants they rely on to their expertise. In this case, geotechnical and surveying and I think some traffic aspect of the project. So you could see how many people in and out of the project at any given point, or what we'll need if you, let's say we decide to insource this project. This is kind of all the expertise that you're going to need to accomplish that project. Again, repeating the disciplines, and I'll be very quick on this. You need the civil engineers, the bridge engineers, the highway, the traffic, the geotechnical, the utilities, the transportation planners, the surveyors, subsurface underground engineering utilities to find out what's underneath our existing infrastructure there, drainage and landscaping, and maybe others. And I'm going to get into the beef of what insourcing and outsourcing consideration is. And we go through this almost very often. Cost is definitely a factor, but it is definitely not the only factor. You know, this is a sad example of a recent 2018 crash, a liability. The bridge was under construction. I'm sure you're all familiar with that, maybe heard it on the news. FIU, the university, was planning to have this bridge span this roadway, and unfortunately, there was a design error. The designer that was hired by the university, designers, they made a mistake or an error in calculation of the structure. And as the structure was being constructed, it fell down. And sadly, 6 people lost their lives. 5 were on the roadway. 1 was working on the bridge. 10 were injured badly, and some still injured. 8 vehicles were crushed. So the liability, if you decide to take on engineering services, we're a big county, and if it's a small engineer, you go after a small engineer may not be a big settlement, but you go after a county, it may be a serious issue. So consideration should be looked at as a liability. Do we have in-house engineers and carry on the design engineering of what they design and sign and seal? Other factors, policy, the board's policy, and you just recently gone through your budget. In March, we will decide to go 2%, let's say, above last year's budget. And your policy dictates, it trickles down to all these divisions and departments to make sure that they live within the policy you set. If you set the policy of 2% or a certain percentage, or even, whatever you set, it gets to us, and we make sure that policy. Lately, the policy was not to increase staffing. So adding staff was not, we barely can meet, in a few years. It's not been just last year. It's been maybe the last 10. I've been here 18 years as a county employee, and I've seen the policy that it's a dirty word to increase staff, frankly. But so that is an issue. Again, you consider other factors like staffing. I tell you, we have a hard time in this market, and Amy Leiberg would probably tell you too, that trying to find engineers in this market is extremely difficult. It's not an easy task to just put an ad in the paper or even in national magazines or engineering professional. They're not easy to find. Marlene had a vacancy in my shop for over 2 years and required the bridge experts. We cannot find engineers to come, and for whatever multiple reasons, the housing, you could blame it on affordability, whatever, we're not paying too much. All of these reasons combined can contribute to this decision. To start with, you can't do it if you can't do insourcing if you can't find the staffing. Flexibility is also a factor. Consultants have more flexibility for a schedule. If you give me 22 projects, which is in my 5-year program, and you say, let's insource all this. Let's do it in-house, not go to consultants. Yeah, unless you have that kind of staffing, you're going to start lining them up one after another, or maybe 2 at a time, and it'll take a long time. With consultants, you have the flexibility to hire 22 consultants, and they'll be working on your projects. I'll go very fast on these. Quality, we have a competition between consultants. They're selected based on their qualifications, not based on, it's your turn or somebody. A selection committee goes through that. So, they compete for quality. If equality on a prior project becomes a factor to these folks who are on selection committee, they didn't provide us, in construction, we had a lot of change orders or claims so the quality is resources. Consultants have ability to recruit expertise, and they have international companies. They have multi-offices. They could have more expertise in one office or another they rely on. Innovation, the private sector has more experience with special projects. You have the bridge, for example, Golden Gate Parkway over airport, which was one of my first projects. You wouldn't want to have all the in-house resources to do something like that kind of expertise. And finally, maintenance. A designer must look at the life cycle of a project, not just I'm going to design this. So that is a big factor in deciding outsourcing and insourcing. And I'm going to have this slide. We called several of our neighboring counties. What do they do? Are they insourcing, outsourcing? In Collier County, I showed you that slide, which has very in-house design team that just for engineering services, it's a small team, and it's less than 2%. Lee County does none. Broward have a large population. They have about 5% of in-house crew. Palm Beach, 5%. Highland County has 105,000. They do almost all their projects by in-house. They have teams that does, and their projects are smaller in nature, similar to my in-house, left turn lanes, right turn lanes, shoulder improvements, stuff like that. Monroe, Henry, and Charlotte have none for insourcing of design. And I'm not talking CEI, I'm talking in design function. You're going out to a consultant. And FDOT has 80 people on their staff in District 1 in 6 teams that they decide a project, for example, and they outsource a lot of the expertise within it. So they do anywhere between 5 to 10. So you got the mixed bag.
Let me ask you a question.
Sure.
We're here to take a look at this, and off of our recent budget discussions, one of the things we've all pledged to do is to dig deep into the county structure and the departments. And we're not here to raid the coffers, kick people out the door, but we want to make sure the taxpayers are getting the biggest bang for their buck. When I saw these slides and I thought, wow, less than 2% is done in-house. And I don't want to put you on the spot. You don't have to answer this question, okay? But at some point, I'd like an answer. Do you think that we have people with unbelievable high levels of expertise as designers, architects, engineers, and all this, but we actually, and maybe the question is, in the past, were we well above 2% ever, or we've always been less than 2%? And I guess the question I'm trying to get around is, there were a few things in my district that I asked questions about, and I thought with the expertise we had on the staff, the answer would all be in-house. And this was, I believe, last year, but it was something significant. And the answer was, oh, we got to get a contractor for that. We got to get outsourced. And my surprise, not shock, but a little bit of surprise was, wow, I know we have a lot of depth on the staff, and sometimes if the project's bigger than a bread box, like you even said in your earlier slides, it actually might be smarter to outsource it. The liability, the complexity, and we might, not that we couldn't do it in-house, but we might not want to do it in-house. But then I sit here and say, when's the last time we really took a look at our staff to make sure that the makeup of our staff and the expertise of our staff matches this less than 2%? I'm going to guess that Highland, even though they're, much smaller county than us, they probably have a different makeup on their staff, because if they're doing 90% of their stuff in-house, they have to have a certain level of expertise. Maybe they don't do projects the way we do. I mean, all counties are different. But even if you have just sort of a generic reply to that, I mean, like I said, it's not attacking, or we're here to sort of take out our machetes and start trimming some things. But we want to make sure the staff in this building matches the need, because if we're paying for expertise in this building, but 98% of the time we're going elsewhere for it, and probably paying a premium, for it. And at times, some of those same contractors come back and go, yeah, it's going to cost this much. And then you very well know a month later, somebody's at that podium and go, well, the contractor took a deeper dive and it's an amendment. They need another $800,000. And there's at times where these bills sort of grow. And, several of us, maybe all of us, sit back here sometimes and go, man, I'm just surprised that couldn't have been housed in house, couldn't have been taken care of in house, or if it couldn't, do we have people that are sitting in offices that have deep expertise that is used a lot less than maybe it used to be? So I mean, I'm throwing that out there as an, but these are the deep dives we're supposed to do. We're less than 2%. I don't want to find out that we're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on staff that have the expertise to oversee a contractor, but they're actually not doing 90%. The way Highland is, and so we might have too much overlap, and also overlap costs money. So what are your thoughts on that, just generically? I'm not looking for like names and things, but this is a healthy conversation.
Yes, it is, and we are having a conversation. I thank you for this question. As I mentioned, this is the design portion of the presentation. I'll get into the CI, and we do a lot more than 2%, obviously, because we're doing Vanderbilt Extension.
Right.
The design functions, we do have experts, leading experts in highway. I've had traffic and in highway design, some bridges. We got experts, we got utilities. The number staff, as I mentioned in one of my slides, we have five project managers that manage all this workload. The surtax added $260 million worth of projects with no staff, essentially. It's just the same staff. Now, if you take those four experts and they give them a computer and AutoCAD and start designing, they will do a design. But now you still need the staffing that manage the rest of the projects. So we, on purpose, kept the staffing lean and just enough to manage the workload that you've, as a policy,
their
give us.
expertise is to oversee of these multiple contractors, so they have the experience, and like you said, hey, they could do it from start to finish, but
Yes.
They can't drop everything and just do that one project. So we get more bang for the buck by having them have the expertise, but it's being utilized to oversee ensure checks and balances, make sure we're not getting ripped off by a contractor, those sort of things. Okay, I mean, that's the answer I was hoping to hear. No. You know, that we're not fat in any one particular area, but we're dynamic enough with a staff that has expertise that can monitor, like you said, many contracts, especially, you know, recently.
Yes,
okay.
Over 22, as I said, being worked on other than what's in construction. You know, if you manage, as I mentioned, the expertise, or if you need to add all these expertise to do that delivery of in-house design projects, you will have close to maybe 100 or more of staffing to do that, not the 5 that you have.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Okay, these are projects that we outsourced, you know, and it's a sample again. These are not all the projects. And as you could tell, the reason for the slide is really we've gone through how many staffing in each request for proposal that was submitted to us, that was the consultant said, or the man hours needed to produce that project. And on the right-hand side, it shows, you know, for Pine Ridge, for example, the consultant proposes 15 people. On other projects, much higher, because there's some, like project development and environmental, there's definitely specialty. Not all of them full-time. They go in and out of a project as expertise are needed. So for just this sample, you're looking at the consultants proposed 138 people, and we are paying for hours that would deliver those projects based on what we thought is needed. At this stage, just to let you know how our negotiations go, I've mentioned the negotiations in how we decide what the fee is for a consultant. We're all experts, and we've done this work. And, you know, the process is following the Florida Department of Transportation strictly. So we decide on what are we buying, you know, the scope of services to the last detail. We set it aside. We negotiate that scope with the consultant. We agree on what are we buying a Cadillac or buying a Chevette? We agree on that scope. And then we go into negotiations separately. We put, as staff, what we think is the hours needed and the costs that will entail as a result for those hours or that project scope. The consultant independently does the same thing. And we submit to procurement at separate time. And procurement calls us, and we look at it, oh, you know, we are so far behind. You know, we are, let's say, a number, and there's 3 times, or sometimes we're equal. And that's how we negotiate. We don't just split the baby. If we are confident of our numbers, and many times they would tell you, if you ask consultants, we're really hard on making sure that the taxpayers get their money worth. We've broke negotiations several times because we can't agree on a number. On Airport Road, for example, they wanted 3.6 million, and we were confident that it should be less than 1.7 million, 1.8 million. And we stuck to our ground, and we went to the second-ranked consultant, essentially firing that highest-ranked consultant, and essentially we got that 1.8 or 1.9 that we were thinking the project should be worth. So it isn't just, oh yeah, consultant, I need this many people. We know this business. You know, you got leading experts in different fields that can tell what it would take to produce a certain task. Here's my conclusion, and again, this is not my conclusion. There's a lot of experts behind me that we debated this. We recommend that you continue outsourcing with this kind of work level that we have, and the reason is you will have to add a lot of folks, FTEs, to your staff to accomplish in-housing, and a lot of expertise. We talked about the liability. You got to house them in offices, computers, and vehicles, and you know, trying to hire one engineer, as I mentioned, is very difficult. Trying to hire, let's say, 100 it's going to be impossible. What consultants actually do, they go and buy a consultant. Recently, you heard whole Montez got bought, or Stantec bought Wilson Miller. The reason they're buying these, it's not just because, because they can't find staffing. You buy a consultant, you come up with the whole list of, the staffing that comes with that consultant. So it is a serious challenge in this region to hire several engineers. And of course, your policy, you have surtax, for example. Now you hire all these people, and let's say you change your mind, or a different board decided not to do a surtax. You added 260 to my work program, and if that staffing, if we hired all these people, you're going to keep them busy for the next projects. And if there is no workflow after that, you got a problem on your hand. We've had layoffs in the past. 2010, some of us lived through that, leading engineers to what I call our main conference room and say, hey, sorry, we don't have work for you. It dropped down and we laid off people. So, that decision has to be, and that's the reason for our decision here. I can stop here, and before I get into the in-house, if you have any questions, maybe I can answer.
I don't see any commissioners lit up yet. Some might, but I wrote some of these comments down when I saw your slides previously, and you touched on some of them. But I think when it comes to outsourcing, my personal biggest concern, but I believe it's shared by all of us because we all sort of articulate the same sort of thing. Our job is to make sure that taxpayers get the biggest bang for their buck. So I understand outsourcing, we all do, and understand the pluses and minuses. We've all been in businesses where we've outsourced plenty of things. I mean, Commissioner McDaniel, probably till he's blue in the face. Me from my old days, I won't say military, but just say prior life, Commissioner Hall, all of us. But where I've been disappointed at times in this seat, and some of it maybe was we didn't have a crystal ball. I realize things happen, but the things that I wrote on here is, outsourced projects being on time and on budget. I can count on more than a couple of fingers here in the short time, my first term in this seat, where we had a bunch of competitive bids. We went with the one company. Everybody else fell out. We were all happy about the one competitive price that came in, and then a month later or whatever the timing was, that same contractor was sitting here asking for a way more money. That maybe had we known that ahead of time, they may not have been the most competitive company. The 5 that dropped out might have said, hey, that was our price. We would have never asked for anything more. And sometimes that can't be avoided. They dig a certain area, they find something else, we change the parameters of the project. But there's more than a couple of times where the verbiage wasn't very impressive. Well, they didn't do a full analysis, and now they need another X hundreds of thousands of dollars. And then we look back at the spreadsheet that showed all the people who bid on it, and wow, they barely got the contract because they were a little bit cheaper, or maybe had a little bit of a better reputation, but in the end, we're paying way more than the next 4 people who didn't get the contract. So that's one of the things I want to make sure that we're always looking out for, and you are as well. So it's those add-ons, those cost overruns. I mean, in my district, I'll just look at the Marco Island Executive Airport. I'm sure when that bid went to that company, everybody was patting themselves on the back. In the end, many years late, ended up in court, settling out of court hundreds and hundreds of thousands of not county dollars, taxpayer dollars. So I understand the advantage of the outsourcing, but gosh, we got to really make sure, especially in this time of tight budgets, that we're using all the expertise humanly possible on our staff to not only make sure we do pick the right contractor, but we hold them accountable. And I can tell you, me personally, I wouldn't bat an eyelash saying, yeah, I know you're asking for another $800,000, but I have a contract here that said you could deliver the project in full. So if you need X number of hundreds of thousands of dollars more, you probably should have sharpened your pencil before you made a bid. I'm sorry, we'll expect it in full for the price that's on there. And if there's some loophole in the contract that doesn't allow us to do that, which sometimes happen, fine prints on the bottom, per any, here's the estimate per any other outside things that could be discovered, and so that's sort of their out. gotta maybe tighten up a little bit here. What are your comments on just that overall type thing? Obviously, when that happens, your staff isn't sitting there going, well, that's just how it goes. But there's been more than a few times. I've even had people I know on the outside say, man, contractors make a ton of money off of the county. You guys got to do your homework a little bit better. And yeah, that's a nice general thing off the top of their head. But I've seen some things here, more than a couple things, where I thought, man, I don't know that I would want to do that all over again. I hope we learned a lesson. What are your thoughts? Like you said, you're in the middle of it.
Thank you for that question. It's a great question. What you're talking about is bidding, contracting. What I've been talking about so far is obviously hiring a consultant, but they're both related.
But it's still, we're paying them money, right?
Yes. The design aspect of it dictates what gets built, right? And the best designer have looked at, minimized the change orders, claims that you could have. Let's say they missed something. That absolutely true. So you hire the best designer, and they design the best product. Most likely you'll end up with less change orders. Not completely no change orders, because change orders is managing change. I mean, if we take money from allowance, let's say we have allowance or contingency in our contracts, it's by process what we do, so transparency, we make a change order to take the money, very transparent process, to take it and put it into the project and to do the activities that we need to do. Sometimes, we want something different. We want there is a change, there is an error. Change orders happen for multiple reasons. But you hit on contracting. Contracting is a low bid. It's by law. We wish we could hire our own people or people that we know. I wish Thomas Murray, I'm going to mention their name because they're really great, bid on every project we have. But I end up with whoever the low bid, unless we found them non-responsive, or they miss something, or they have a history of bad performance, been banned from other counties, stuff like that.
You think we're doing a better job catching those kind of things? I mean, that we're always looking for improvement.
We always could do better. I can tell you the low bid usually is very difficult to kick out a low bidder. And maybe Jeff can opine on this. We've had contractors, we know they're bad, but they were $1 million or $2 million below the second one. And you got a decision to make, and we bring it to you.
But we don't have the latitude. If you find a contractor that's $2 million less than everybody else, but they have 3 lawsuits on the East Coast, what prevents us from being able to say, look, if this was my house and this was my money, and oh, by the way, it is. Our job's to manage taxpayer dollars. This makes no sense. This is the worst way to go. It's not a good investment.
If that contractor exists with 3 lawsuits, and obviously the court would have to adjudicate what those lawsuits are. I mean, if they're guilty of fraud or something like that, you definitely can not assign them. And maybe, Jeff, you can help me with this.
But sometimes it's just bad reputation is what you're sort of implying. Hey,
most of the
they don't
time
have
is,
anything,
contractors go out for a low bid and hope that they can drive us crazy with change orders and add and add and add. Eventually they make their...
Well, that's the thing that gets me. They bid $2 million less, and in the end, when we're sitting here cutting the ribbon, we spent $4 million more. I mean, I'm just throwing numbers out there, but something similar to that has happened before. And so, they know if they're $2 million less, they'll get the contract, because like you said, maybe our hands are tied. They don't have lawsuits, but maybe kind of a shady reputation. But I'll then turn it over to Mr. Klatskow to see where our latitude is. But then in the end, they know they can make up the difference. And sometimes what they ask for in change orders or additional funds then supersedes the people who lost the bid, who maybe would have never asked for anything. So, Mr. Klatskow, what is our recourse when we have a contractor that maybe doesn't have 5 lawsuits, but just has a really bad reputation, or has done county business before and it was less than impressive? Do we have the latitude as commissioners to get involved and listen to our staff and say we're about to be force-fed into a contractor that we already know we're going to have issues with?
If you've got a good faith belief and staff has given you the reasons for it, to make a decision not to go with the low bidder, then yes, you've got the ability to do that, understanding that the contractor has the ability to bring suit against the county. I'm not worried about the contractor bringing suit against the county, but yes, you have that latitude.
Okay. Well, I guess what we would all say up here, I mean, or I'll just speak for myself, but I can't imagine we don't all agree here, is don't be shy about coming to the commissioners. Don't, like, what I'm just hearing here is we're never forced to do almost anything. Yeah, there are times where our hands are tied, but we might spend less in a lawsuit fighting the contractor that we're brushing off than taking that contractor on, and in the end spending millions more, ending up in court, settling out of court, where in the end, we'll take on the legal argument to not make them the pick if you've got some rationale that holds water. I think we
do that, and we've done that in the past where we brought contracts and we said, please don't award.
Yes, sir.
I've done that. We go through a process with procurement that we call the references, not just the low bid. We go through the references, and we have the design engineer opine on is it qualified, and
right.
It's the low bid is a legit and qualified contractor.
Okay.
And we go through
now
that.
Commissioner Hall wants to ask, sir, and then Commissioner McDaniel's on deck.
Thanks, Jay. You've definitely given me some different things to think about, and I've got some questions written down, and they're kind of random because that's the way my brain works. I think there's definitely a balance in what you're saying. We can't do it all in-house. We shouldn't do it all CEI. So I appreciate this conversation. It seems to me, just from sitting here for almost a year, that the county is a scapegoat. It's the way out for a contractor that makes, that doesn't get it right. They get our backs against the wall, they come back and they ask for more money. And that's kind of the conversation that we just had. Is there ways that we can stop that? Can we hold the contractors accountable?
Commissioner, that's not what's happening. It's just not. I mean, our experience with contractors aren't any different with private experiences with contractors. There's some good out there, there's some not good out there. Usually the fault lies not with the contractor, but in the labor pool that they're trying to get. And as you know, the labor pool in Southwest Florida is very, very tight now. So we'll be running a job, and then somebody else will come along to those workers and say, I can double what you're making. Then boom, that job site is now empty of our people. So our experience is no different. Look, I talk to Nick all the time. Our experience is no different with the private company's experience with contractors. It is essentially a material shortage issue, and most particularly a labor issue right now.
I guess my question is, knowing that there's a labor issue, knowing that there's a material shortage, contractors that bid these jobs, they know that as well. So where is the accountability that we as the county hold them to the line? Because there's a material shortage, we shouldn't take the brunt of it if somebody's bidding that, knowing that already.
Well, we do have liquidated damages in all our contracts. And if it's a question of bad faith by the contractor, we do have our remedies. I will tell you, though, that there are not that many contractors that bid for work for Collier County because it's not easy working with Collier County with all our rules and regulations. Payment can be issues, too, more so than the private sector. We have a clerk who does a fine job, but she ensures that everything, is validly paid. So, no, I don't know what to tell you. It's just our experience is no different than anybody else right now.
To add to that, thank you, Jeff, for that. It is accountability on. I take that responsibility. My team does. The CEI, they do. A change order that is submitted to us is not automatically reviewed and approved. I would say maybe the overwhelming majority of them are denied, and at the end, Jeff ends up with a lawsuit from the contractor that we denied this, and we either settle or go to court. But we are not. We are the eyes out there in construction. The project manager, a contractor submits a change order, doesn't mean that that change order is going to be approved. That's what we do. That's part of what I will be describing next on the CEI. You mentioned CEI in construction. What I've been talking about so far is hiring a designer to design our projects so it can go to construction and start getting the CEI and construction.
All right. So I'm going to pull it up about 50,000 feet from a broader spectrum. You mentioned that adding staff is a dirty word. And I don't necessarily think it'd be a dirty word. If we were to add 20 million of staff and save 40 million in CEI, that's a good investment. There's definitely a balance there. And I think there is a balance. And one of my thoughts were, is it possible to join forces, and are we joining forces where we use the expertise that we have in-house and then hire what we don't, instead of just hiring carte blanche everybody?
On the CEI, I agree with you. And you will see that would be my recommendation as well in the presentation. On design, you need, and maybe I'll answer it in fully once I go through that exercise of showing you how much savings we do when we do in-house CEIs. We do have a CEI program currently ongoing, and our estimates, we save approximately 50%. We save for every 5 folks that you hire, or inspectors, you save approximately $1.5 million to $2 million. There is definitely a saving. Now, the question becomes, that savings assumes that once I finish this project, I'm going to take that team and do the next project. You have a flow of projects. If you have minimal projects coming up in the pipeline, then your savings are all gone. As far as your comment about, we have done, for example, when Amy actually was our director of stormwater, we've had my CEI team were at a low, and we lend them to the stormwater. They did west of Goodlet project, and by in-house forces. We do when we can. It becomes a staffing calculation. Is it worth hiring all these folks to do all the projects? And as you said, it's a balancing act. I believe, should be a balancing act.
What do you think, to draw a good experienced engineer, what would we have to pay them?
I can draw on not just the pay. We have a housing market that's extremely expensive. We've hired engineers from northern states for that position that I mentioned. And when they come down and start looking at our housing market, you're a one-bedroom apartment over $2,000. You can't afford to live in Naples. They'll end up moving into north counties and driving distances, and they change their mind. But the pay definitely is another factor. Amy Leiberg would tell you, we negotiate, roughly we have a minimum and we have a maximum. We never negotiate, usually about 10% above, to a qualified many years experience. We are open, and Amy and our county manager's team been great at it. If we have the right candidate, they've been looking at these candidates and making a judgment. And we've done prices much higher than the 10%, so to attract talent. The issue is other factors that involved other than salaries.
What would a low figure be, and then what would a high figure be?
Yeah, I would say a project manager out of college right now I think we're paying them around $50,000 to $65,000.
Hey, what about an experienced engineer?
An experience with good luck hiring a PE for less than $120,000. We've been facing that $120,000 and higher, and even then, we're not finding them.
I mean, that's less than what I would have thought anyway, so that's good.
If you allow me, Mr. Chairman, I can continue, or
we just go to the other
questions?
commissioners, because their comments might be indicative of what you've just been saying. Commissioner McDaniel, and then Commissioner Cole.
I guess I wanted to ask you want to go ahead and let Jay go through the balance of his presentation, or you want to have some discussion as we're going?
I mean, I think this is a workshop, so discussion as you're going is my preference,
Okay.
because it's stuff's fresh and we're talking together. Do you have some comments?
I do.
Yeah.
And again, you've been in the seat for less than a year. Commissioner Saunders has forgotten more about these things than I'll ever know, and I'm here coming on 7. We're hamstrung at multiple levels. We have a statute called the CCNA that is horrible for us to conduct business under. It's a statute that's imagine you're building your house and you have to go hire a contractor, and the same premise blows whether it's a contractor or an engineer, design, whatever. You have to hire the contractor based on their qualifications. Then you get to, and they already know what the price is. We've put out a price estimate. We have to hire the contractor based upon qualifications. Then we get to hire, and we have to hire them based upon their qualifications when they already know what the price is. We're absolutely hamstrung by the CCNA. And there was an effort, and it wasn't successful along the short, to adjust that CCNA just to allow a pricing component to come into the bidding process during the assertion of qualifications. And that pricing component was not allowed to be inserted into the statute. If we could do that, that would allow us an enormous amount of latitude in picking and choosing contractors, whether it be for design, plant, whatever, oversight, anything along those lines. Number 2, some adjustments I think need to be made with regard to our contractual arrangements on how we actually pay our contractors. I would like to have our staff work with the clerk's office to better define the payment processes. Collier County has a horrible reputation for being a payer. And largely it's because our clerk, of course, we do. You can shake your head no all you want, Crystal, but the bottom line is we have a horrible reputation for being a good payer. And so we have price components that are put into the contracts that come to us on the premise that they're not going to be paid in what they perceive to be as a decent, timely manner. And so if we could make adjustments to the processes, so when there is, and I'm going to use this as an example, just as a hypothetical example, but there's a $50,000 bill that's been submitted, but there's 10,000 of it that is in question because the I's aren't dotted and the T's aren't crossed. Pay the 40 that's there, don't withhold the entire 50. And then go through the process of actually ascertaining the I's and T's and dotted, and Crystal's gonna come up and yell at me because she doesn't concur with the thought process. Please, I don't need you to come here, please.
But you're misstating the information.
I am not misstating
Absolutely will
information.
short pay
Wait 1 second.
vendors.
Wait. We're not gonna.
Okay.
Commissioner McDaniel has the floor.
Yes, thank you. On that note, we pay thousands of bills a day. Thousands of bills a day. But an adjustment in our contractual arrangements on how we in fact conduct business, there are also many bills that are withheld in their entirety because of a question of a relatively speaking small amount for the outstanding balance in the request. And I think that's a simple adjustment that could be accomplished to allow for a better flow and ultimately ascertain a better reputation for how we're paying our contractors.
Do you think we're losing good contractors because if what you're saying is true, they see that payment sort of the way we do it, and they're like, you know, the old saying I always say, the juice isn't worth the squeeze, and we might be getting contractors that say, look, I don't want to be nickel and dime. And Ms. Kenzel, I'm not here to stifle anyone, so just
We're not throwing rocks.
This is a workshop, so if you want to come to the podium before, during, after Jay, I just want to keep order here so we can hear from one person at a time. But is that one of your? Because I do hear from contractors who say, wow, either our company gets rich off of the county, but they might not be the best contractor, or we are paying quickly and we're not holding up money, and they love that, and that's why they keep making bids. So, I mean, I sort of feel like in my short time, I hear a little bit of both, but I definitely appreciate what you're saying, which is, you know, if you got a $10,000 issue, why not just pay them the 40 that they were good for? And maybe we do that. Maybe we're going to hear a different side. This is a workshop, so it's dialogue. But go ahead, sir.
There was a study that was done the year before I came into office. No. Forgive me. Back in 2010, 2011, an independent study was done, and it was determined, I think Barron Collier Companies effectuated the study, if I'm not mistaken, and I'll look and see if I can find it, but, you know, Collier County was ranked one of the worst counties to actually do business with, and a lot of that had to do with the payment plans and how things were effectuated. Are we losing good contractors because they won't do business with the county? I would have to say yes. And I think if we work with the clerk's office and our senior management and our county attorney with regard to our contractual arrangements to allow for a quicker path to pay the people that are actually doing the workforce, that's going to incentivize more people to want to do work with us. Now, that's also encumbered by our interpretation of our zoning codes, our interpretation of the building codes, and the individual subjectivity that flows into the statutory building codes that are put upon us, and then also the individual interpretation and subjectivity that's allotted within our land development code as well, and what can and cannot be done. The premise of what my statement here is, and I've taken too much time, there's not a silver bullet. There are many factions. There are many functions that could be accomplished that I think that would enhance how we conduct our business and do what we do. Not just one.
Okay. Commissioner Cowell, sir?
Thank you, Chairman. I kind of wanted to ask these. I think these may fall in line with this portion of your presentation. I guess one of my questions is, who oversees the actual quality control of these projects? Is it done by the design team, the engineering, or is it in-house, or is it the contractor itself?
Good question. The quality control, quality assurance, for the design aspect of it, is multitasker. Sometimes on projects we have the expertise in-house to look through and red line, what I call, we use Blue Beam with different departments. Stormwater looks at the stormwater, maintenance looks at the maintenance. All the departments get a copy of the design plans from the stages of design, and they opine on it. At times, and more recently, because we don't have the staffing, we outsource even that. We had another consultant looking to oversee the designers, and they're really hard on each other. They you know, a designer looking, a qualified designer, looking at somebody else's design, they make sure that they provide enough comments. They get paid by the comments, I suppose, but they give a substantial amount of comments regarding the design. Other aspect like bridges, by regulations, we have to have a peer review in addition to our staff. We have bridge engineers make sure that the calculations and all that stuff is done correctly.
Now, that's still in the design phase, but
Right.
once we implement the design,
Yes.
in field, who's responsible for quality control of the actual work being done?
And that's what I'm going to get into next, is
Okay.
the CEI team. Myself, I'm leading that team as well. Matt Thomas is my construction manager. And Matt McLean and all these other teams in the county have similar functions. They make sure that the project is built in accordance with the plans and specifications. And testing in my field, and you will hear that, we test everything. We test soil. You know, there's some folks.
We do that in-house, or do we outsource?
No, we outsource that function. We don't have
So there's
nuclear
a third
density.
layer that we hire.
Yes.
Another firm to back check the quality control of the actual placement, which is the
Absolutely.
contractor / doing what the designer has
We're
already.
governed by the FDOT specifications and standards, And in order to ensure that is done and quality control, we must do CEI and test every aspect. We test concrete, asphalt, earthwork, steel, you name it. Every issue on the field is tested several times throughout the project to make sure that the quality of compaction is done, the asphalt is to the right gradation and specifications, the
They do
steel is
density
what we bought.
tests,
Yes,
stick the little nuclear thing in the ground.
yeah, we have those.
Yeah, I used to
Not
do that myself
in-house,
before.
but we have, and that's the reason we don't do it in-house, you know, to test, for example, what you mentioned, the asphalt is a nuclear test, it's actually using nuclear, and they test the asphalt to make sure it has a proper compaction, so it lasts for the years that we say it will.
So with that all being said, when the design brings us forward and we've got a designer that puts it together for the particular project, and what Commissioner Castro was saying, that, you know, then we still get a lot of these work orders and these change orders, you know, and this might even be a question for the attorney, you know, are they held liable at some point because they miss things and now the taxpayer's held to pay the price for missing certain things?
Change orders, absolutely, if it's a design error, and we know it's a design error, and we evaluate every change order in construction.
But then who's responsible for paying it? I guess that's my
The
question.
designer would be responsible if it's a design error. We make him fix it. If it's a value added, most of the change orders, believe it or not, I've gone through that at length throughout my career. Again, I worked with Connecticut DOT and a consultant for 18 years, and now 18 years in Collier
I guess
County.
what I'm saying, are we being really vigilant and saying, all right,
Absolutely.
this is definitely a design error and we shouldn't have the taxpayers be stuck?
We're not paying for
We're
something
not-
that somebody made a mistake on,
Okay.
yeah?
All right, thank you. Thank you.
Commissioner Saunders.
You just started to say something about the change orders and the majority of change orders, and I think you were getting ready to talk about how they are generally a benefit. Could you go through what types of change orders we are experiencing and what's the impact of those?
It's the gamut, frankly. There are good change orders. You get me on this high horse of change orders. I'll be talking until tomorrow, but in overall, I think
Maybe a little shorter.
To himself.
change orders are not dirty words in my world. If you look at any project management course, or I teach some of our new engineers project management, it's managing change. It's like the chapter 2 or chapter 3 of a project. Many of our change orders, like I mentioned, is value added. In design, we discover that there is a need let's take Chokolowski Bridge, for example. We went to design and construction with an idea, the walls that supports the earth, we're going to keep because, you know, they look good. We get into construction, and after you take some of the material, you discover that there is a huge issue with the wall. You didn't know when you went to design, and now that's a change order. On the same project, a good change order, the contractor says, I can do this better than your designer did. And there is a process in the FDOT manual that says cost incentive. If you come to us with a better idea and we implement that idea, you design it and you show us that you can, you know, I'm not buying a Yogo for a Cadillac, it's the same value, you get 50% of the savings that the county saved over $600,000 in a change order that produced that result. Collier Boulevard from Davis to US 41. The contractor says, you know, the material that we use in asphalt, and this is better roads back then, and he's an asphalt person. He says, you have to import from Miami. I have the same material here, but you have to study it to say it's the same quality. And we've done that. And I think it was a $500,000 change order in the benefit of the county instead of hauling that material to his shop, because FDOT, frankly, not just Naples area, it's spec for, they're bad change orders. they're really bad change orders. You know, you get into a project and somebody says, let's expand this a little bit more, you know, and a lot of times it comes through the board, it comes through citizens that come to public meetings and demand it. I'll give you an example. Veterans Memorial. We designed an 6-foot sidewalk. Veterans Memorial, the public came to the public meeting and says, there's 2 schools in here, and why not make it 10 feet? Somebody jogging, somebody on a wheel, a stroller, somebody walking can walk at the same time. And it was a good idea. We used the standard 6 feet sidewalks, and we ended up with a change order. It's a very substantial change order. Another change order on the same project. Like I said, I could talk for a long time. The neighborhood says, hey, Imperial, and we brought that item to you. Imperial Gulf States, they now really close to the roadway. They said, can you study this for noise abatement? And we used the federal process to do that. We studied it. Sure enough, they qualify for a noise abatement where in the design they didn't, because we changed the design. We brought the roadway a little bit closer to them. And that's a change order. And to talk about how we manage change orders, the contractor gave us $1.9 million to do that during the project. Says, crap, we could do it for less than $1 million. And we have our in-house team design it. We went to bid, but unfortunately it took us a long distance. We ended up with the same price, frankly, as the change order. But at the time, if the contractor accepted, and we didn't accept that change order because we feel that's not a legit price that the contractor insisted we must comply with.
Question for the county attorney. And the Marco Island Airport project was one that we had some serious problems with, no question about that. But just as a general rule, it almost sounds like every project or most projects we have go bad. And just from your perspective, Mr. Klatskow, what is our experience, and how would you compare that with other communities where you've got at least some knowledge? Because I know the county attorneys always get together for an annual meeting, and there's always talk about all of the different problems that different counties have. So just where are we in that spectrum of problems with contracts? We got the Marco Island Airport project. I'd like to know a little bit about what went bad on that, and then what's our experience generally?
What went bad on the Marco Island was you had a low bidder. It's the statute. You give it to the low bidder unless you have a reason not to, and we would have preferred a different contractor for that one, but the one we had was a low bidder, and they drug their heels, quite frankly.
I'm sorry, what does that mean?
They didn't perform as quickly as they should have. I mean, they were working multiple jobs, so when they got to us, they got to us. When they didn't get to us, they didn't get to us. I will tell you that the settlement of that one was very favorable for the county, so at the end of the day, the county did very well for the airport, with the exception that it took a while for it to open up.
How much of a delay was there, do you recall?
I think it was like 2 years, something like that. It was lengthy. It was lengthy, and the contractor did pay for that. As far as how we do business here, you have a very good staff here, and your staff manages these contracts as well as any staff in the state, if not better. The issue you have is that it just costs contractors more to do business with Collier County than it can do in the private sector. And so when you see contracts coming to you, you might have 2 bidders. If you're lucky, you'll have 3 bidders. We just don't have that many people bidding on our projects because we're hard to deal with from a government standpoint. And that's true for all governments, by the way. I mean, Barron Collier does not have a clerk that has to look through every invoice to ensure that it matches the contract. I mean, it's just an additional layer of checks and balances that we have that the private sector does not have. So I would say that based on my conversations over the years, your staff does a fine job. And when you come right down to it, in all my years here, I cannot recall a single time where we had a project that we said, oh my God, this is a disaster. We've had some delays, all right? But we've got some beautiful projects in Collier County.
Well, I guess the question is, you got the Marco Island Airport example, a couple-year delay from a financial standpoint. Apparently, did not turn out to be too.
No, we did well.
But are you familiar with other projects where we've had the similar types of problems? I'm sure there has to be some because we've got hundreds of projects over the years.
None that have really risen to my level. I mean, at the end of the day, we've had very few disputes with our contractors. Now, there are times where we'll discuss liquidated damages with them and resolve it that way. But no, every piece of litigation comes to you guys, and you don't
No,
see
that's
a
the
lot.
same question for Mr. Finn and Ms. Patterson. Both of you have been here for a long time. I'm just curious as to what type of experience we are actually having with our contracts.
So I will say that since the pandemic, obviously we find ourselves in a different place with the workforce than we were before. So we had some difficult projects that we managed through the pandemic, but to County Attorney Klaskow's point, they aren't ones that largely rose to litigation. They were delayed for a variety of reasons, and we continue to struggle now in this environment with inflation and workforce just like everybody does. I could point to one or two projects that I had during my time in stormwater that experienced difficulties due to various delays, staffing, low bidder, but we ended up resolving them and satisfactorily completing the project. They were painful at the time, but we made our way through. One is the often referenced West Goodlet project. It experienced, and of course that was going on during the height of COVID, where sometimes there weren't enough people to even do the work. So that complicated the fact that we had a low bidder that was not prepared for some of the intricacies of that job. And what we did was we made sure that we documented all of that. So should they bid on a future job, we knew that we had difficulties with them. And so that's something that we're encouraging the staff to do when they're experiencing difficulties. There's all different reasons why. But if it truly is a relationship issue with the contractor, that's something that is not that frequent, but is something that they will document so that we know that when we're looking at hiring various contractors or firms in the future, whether it be design or construction. The same thing with change orders. So we aggressively attack these change orders, both the positive and those perceived as negative. It is a project manager's tool and one that is required, but change order just for change order's sake is something that we take very seriously. You'll see them coming onto the agenda now as largely standalone items so that it explains the intricacies of why that's happening. And if we see these things happening repeatedly, that's something that we're dealing with right away. So I feel like where we were and where we are with change orders is made some pretty significant progress. But again, I agree with the county attorney, and I'll look at Mr. Finn. But for the sports complex, which it's its own animal, we have some jobs that didn't go exactly the way we planned, but we did manage our way through it, and not to the detriment of the taxpayers.
Let me ask one more question, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Kenzel, if she would come up here for just a second, because there's always a conflict between the county commission and the county manager and the clerk. That's just the way things are kind of set up in the statutes. But we have an incredibly good working relationship with our clerk. And I think there may have been some misinformation potentially in terms of how her office operates in terms of paying bills. We obviously want to make sure our contractors are paid in a timely manner, but we also want to make sure that our contractors aren't overbilling or trying to take advantage of the county. And so your oversight, which is statutory, keeps us from getting into that kind of trouble. But there's been some discussion about payment of bills, and I just want to get an understanding of how you process a bill, and if there is a problem with a piece of a bill, a portion of it, what your reaction is to how you deal with that.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. And I apologize because you are right. You hit a hot button because we have worked so diligently
Before
with
you
the
go forward,
contractors.
just stop with "you were right."
No?
Let the record reflect.
No, I didn't
We're
say it
gonna
was
take a
right. I
15-minute
said
break.
let me.
That's one person's opinion.
No, I didn't say it
Go
was
ahead,
right.
Ms. Kenzel, you got the
Okay,
floor.
let me. I do take it very personally as clerk. And we have done, you might refer to 2010, and I was still finance director then, so I still take it personally. But in the past, we had a lot of issues and changes. I will tell you, several things have totally changed. First and foremost is the relationship with county staff, the Board of County Commissioners, and our office. If something is going wrong, we try to jump on it right away. We will short pay. As a matter of fact, we have had to force vendors to take short payments because of the attorneys being very hesitant to accept a short payment. And we have said, working with the county attorney's office, no, we were willing to continue to talk to you about differences, but let us pay what we can audit and pay you. And we have had many of those meetings in our offices on some of the particularly large projects. Commissioner McDaniel, you've called me probably 4 or 5 times in the last year.
More than that.
If I recall, the majority of those are because your contractors don't pay their subcontractors. They have not had to do with the clerk not paying the contractor. So we do have some work to do there. But I can tell you, prior to COVID, we had started working with CBIA, and we are willing to continue to do that. We have brought in personally into my office with my auditing staff, for example, the Colliers on some of the villages aspects, and we have worked through with them exactly the documentation we're looking for, how to get it paid quickly before we ever get into a payment situation. We have worked with CBIA to include outside contractors to try to encourage them how to do business with the county so that we can pay you properly. So I think we've made a lot of those steps. The robust nature of SAP, fortunately, we can track when the invoice hits our door, who handles it, who touches it, how long they take, and where it goes. So anytime you call me with a vendor problem, I can look at the history, and I can assure you if it's our fault, we will take action against the individual clerk that maybe was negligent. But the majority of them are not. The clerk's office not paying vendors. So I don't want that mantra to be out there because that will harm us getting vendors. I think what we're talking about with short labor, let's see, what else have I put on here? What we have talked to a lot of the vendors on how to do that business. What we see in processing has a lot to do with contract language. We're working right now through Ashbridge, just to name one. They want a contract change after the event. That isn't really legal. So we do look at that for legal. We have unfortunately submitted 3 vendors recently for prosecution for falsifying documents and defrauding the county. So crossing T's and dotting I's isn't something that we prosecute for, but falsifying and trying to steal from the county or the taxpayers, we will prosecute for. So I just wanted it on the record. We can track everything that comes into us. We sit down individually with vendors, particularly if it's a new large vendor. We ask them to please come in so we can work with you and make sure you're paid very quickly. So I take pride in that, on how quickly we do process the invoices. Everything is supposed to come through a portal that's tracked and timed, goes to the department for their oversight, review, and approval, comes back to us, and then we have a prompt payment time frame that we are required to meet by statute.
Okay, thank you.
Can I speak? Don't go away, Crystal. Come on back. I know I hit a button. I also said we pay thousands of bills every day.
Over 100,000+ a year, yes.
Yes. Thousands of bills a day get paid. My suggestion is and was that we work with you, our county attorney, with regard to our contracts, our senior staff with regard to how we're working with our contractors, and enhance communication. The recent one that you and I spoke of was you call it short pay. And there was a misunderstanding based upon information that came to the contractor that was due a certain amount of money, and they were offered what we designated as a short pay. The interpretation was that was the pay, the short amount. What it was a communication breakdown between the contractor, the clerk's office, the contractual arrangement. So my suggestion is that we enhance our communication amongst our county attorney with information from you so that we can have better contracts and have better communication with our contractors to better understand the process so that they can in fact be paid in a timely manner. And I will say, for the record, as you like to say, your office is doing an amazing job for our county, for the protection of our taxpayers' money. You and your office are doing an amazing job for our county.
Thank you. I do want to say this. I talk to the county attorney and the county manager's office probably every single day. And so we are really enjoying the best relationship we've seen. And I put it out to the public and to any commissioner. If you hear otherwise, get with us. We'll resolve it right away. Okay? But thank you. No more hot buttons, right?
Commissioner Hall.
We're not done yet.
I can definitely see the pluses and the minuses of the CEI process and the in-house stuff. And so instead of feeling like we're attacking the process, we're not at all. I think we're just passionate as a group to improve the process. And so, instead of sitting here taking questions and feeling like, you have to defend yourself, please don't. And so hearing our hearts on that, and I'm speaking for everybody, what we would like to see, I think, coming forward are your thoughts on how we can improve. I know the desire is there, but we want to implement those desires too. Same way with, I hear stories after stories of code enforcement or meeting the code. And Collier County is difficult to deal with because we face multiple inspections. One guy will come out and say one thing, one guy will come out and say another thing. And I know that process is not perfect, but that it can be improved. And that's really, I think, what we're saying and what the workshop is for, is we want to see business as usual not happen, where we can do things better, we want to, and where we can learn from our mistakes, we want to do that as well.
And thank you, Commissioner. It's exactly the same goal we have. We never stop looking at how we can improve. And if we do, we shouldn't be working actually for the county. But because we are as passionate as public servants as anyone, and we hope that we show it and we demonstrate it every time we come before you, that we are passionate about this service.
Jay, before you move on, just a couple of thoughts I wrote down while I was listening to the commissioners, and then we'll press. I talk about the Marco Island Executive Airport a lot because it's in my district. It's a multi-million-dollar project that not only just is a building, and it was great that we cut a ribbon, but it gives an amazing service to people during peacetime, we'll say. But if we had a Hurricane Katrina hit here, that airport now all of a sudden becomes the Red Cross headquarters, FEMA headquarters. I mean, we're lucky in this county to have multiple runways. And I do know what I'm talking about due to my prior experiences. There are counties that are dead in the water because support has to land hundreds of miles away and then be trucked to their community. We all of a sudden turn our Naples Airport, our Marco Island Executive Airport. We have a couple of other landing strips, something out in Immokalee, so there's great value there. So when those projects don't go great, it's not about beating that dead horse, but I've said before, we always want to learn from past poor history. And at times we don't have a crystal ball, so it looks like everything's, going in a good direction. But I do remember analyzing that contract a bit, and as the county attorney said, it was 2+ years late. But that was another contractor that I was told, because I had a big powwow in my office, get me up to speed as to how we will never have this happen again, and educate me. And some of the feedback I got was, we knew right away, similar to what you said, this was a bad contractor. I remember being told, and we don't need to debate it here, but I was told this, that when we dug a little deeper, when the project was stalling, we found out that this contractor, maybe under a different name or something like that, in the East Coast, had some legal issues that, we knew the contractor wasn't great, but in the middle of the project, when it had stalled, we found out they were less than great. So, maybe there's a lesson to be learned there. I disagree a little bit with the county attorney, and not in a disrespectful way, but when he says, hey, in the end, when we settled out of court, we actually made money and everything. Project's 2 years late. Time is money. We could have been landing airplanes, putting them in hangars, not being embarrassed out in the community. So even if in the end, dollar-wise, it was a push, and we're not here to sort of debate that, I still think anything that's 2 years late, I mean, I wouldn't look at that as a success because we settled out of court and we sort of limited our damage. I mean, I look at it as that's an embarrassing process, regardless if in the end it was a push. But on a good note, one of the things we need to do in this room more is talk about those projects, and Commissioner Saunders touched on it a little bit. Hey, is the Marco Island Executive Airport the exception or the rule? And what we're finding out in here, it's sort of in the middle. You start throwing the sports complex in there and a few other things that sort of didn't go perfect. Maybe we don't have a 95% horrific rate, but I'll end it on a positive note. We really should make sure we articulate in this room and to the general public those projects that go right. And I'll just use my district as an example. The Goodland Road, right? I mean, on time, or actually early, on budget. Look how much magic you and your team work with the contractor. And when we were like, hey, can the contractor come out here at 2 or 3 a.m. and do some work? They can get 8 hours of work done in 2 hours because nobody's here. But we don't want to pay more for it. But in the end, everybody's going to be cheering this project. I remember saying to the contractor, you do this thing early and on budget and work with us, a picture of this road is going to be on the brochure of everything you advertise about your company because you were part of the success, and I know we've had more successes, like that. And then so I just say, let's not waste an opportunity when we have something on time, on budget. Our experts in the county, our design experts, hold a contractor accountable. When we're getting sort of the overview at the end of a project that's finished, there really should be a slide at the end that says report card. It was an A+, an A-. That's pretty good. Or, it was a D-, and this is one that is an anomaly for a bunch of reasons we couldn't anticipate. But we definitely learned a lot from it. But I know we've had projects to piggyback on Commissioner Saunders' observation that have been good, but it's almost like we never talk about the good. We joke in here that if you flush a toilet, you don't thank the county. If you turn on your computer in this building, we don't send an email to IT and go, wow, you guys are doing an awesome job today. But there's so much that you guys are doing behind the scenes that have been a good use of the taxpayer dollars. And so as part of this workshop and discussion, sometimes maybe we need to sort of cheer that a little bit more so we can see that there is a balance. I'll just end on that positive note because I know there's been plenty of projects out there, or projects that were really, really complicated and difficult, septic to sewer conversion. Yeah, maybe to the 3 civilians that came in here, citizens rather, that were unhappy. But the reality was, wow, that thing really could have gone poorly, as it does a lot of times in other counties, but we did an incredible job. And so, I want to end on a positive note that there's plenty of projects that you guys do, Honcho, from start to finish that I think sometimes get lost in the Marco Island Airport, the sports complex and all that. And, maybe finding a little bit more balance to be able to articulate to the community when we do have something that is not the exception because it went well, but it's becoming the rule.
Actually, most of our projects go very well, and I think we probably could do a better job in exactly what you're saying in advertising the great success that we have. We usually have a ribbon cutting ceremony that you folks come and kind of be part of that, and it is a celebration of an end of a project. There are many, many examples of great projects, and the public just appreciate, Veterans Memorial, the bridge that is under construction in Golden Gate City. I mean, we built it under traffic and minimal interruptions to the public. Yeah, there's some delay here and there, but the bridge is approaching completion, and there's example after example. All these projects, you look around you. 20 years ago, the county had one lane in each direction, and most of these roadways, you got 6 lanes everywhere, and the people think how beautiful it is with landscaping and this and that.
And I don't think we over-cheer it. We're not trying to pat ourselves on the back too much, but at times when when we did head off a lot of challenges or we made some smart decisions or whatever, I think just being able to get credit, for those as well. Lastly, I'll say sometimes I think when a project goes less than successful, we want to make sure we're not settling for mediocrity, where it's like, well, it sort of went below average, but that's how they kind of go in the county. That's just the way it is. And I think there are times where we sort of get in a little bit of a funk where, we can overly accept those expectations that maybe could have been caught, a little bit sooner. I'll use the airport as an example. When that contractor wasn't showing up for months, where was the county screaming? And they were at times, but not to my satisfaction. And we finally dragged them back there and did. When I say we, the staff and everybody, and got that person. We settled a lot of times when that airport was a ghost town because he was on another project. That's not acceptable. And once we got things into motion, then stuff started happening. But I can tell you, if we would have continued to coast, that thing would have been 3.5 years late. But having said that, because you're going to move into a totally different topic, why don't we just take a 10-minute break for the court reporter? Anybody wants to use the restroom?
All down here.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, we'll go to the commissioners and then we'll break because you do have sort of a break in topic here. Commissioner McDaniel and then Commissioner Colwell, you're on deck, sir.
Thank you. You said it, and I forgot to say it before, but I'm going to repeat what you said. At the end of the day, time is money. Lack of use costs us money. Lack of communication costs us time. And so enhancement of communication will ultimately save us money and provide for better use of the taxpayers' money. Time is money.
Sir. Commissioner Colwell, then we'll take a break.
Thank you, Chairman. Since he's talking about projects and being done on time, Jay, I hate to bring this up, but you know where I'm going with this, right? Whippoorwill and Maribel Lakes. And we've had this conversation, and we got a perfectly good road that's done over there, right? But we promised the citizens we wouldn't open that road until the traffic light was put in place. And I basically asked, what's the delay? And the answer was the traffic control box that was supposed to run that traffic light was taken and used over to the high school, the new high school that was open.
No, exactly not it, sir. What I mentioned is there is a supply issue that we're facing in the county and actually throughout the state, possibly the whole country. Traffic controllers take approximately a year to a year and a half to procure and buy. And what I said in our discussion, I may have misspoke to you when we had that discussion. What I said, for Veterans Memorial, I needed to open that roadway for the school before it started.
Yeah, I understand that.
And I had controllers that I have in my shop that I used to kind of advance, because that would have had the same fate as Whippoorwill. We loaned them controllers, making sure that when they get the controller, and to date they have not, when they get the controllers from the suppliers, they bring them back to us. We were able to open the roadway on time. In the Whippoorwill case, the roadway is obviously has been closed. We're making a new connection, and we promised the folks at Marabella that we're not going to open the roadway until we have some traffic control, because they're going to get additional traffic from Pine Ridge and the communities to the north. And with that, the controller is not here. And I can't lend them the ones that I have just in case I have a hurricane for that project. It was just a risk assessment made on that level. We could have lent them, we have one, I think, or two controllers. If a traffic, if an accident or crash hit one of our controllers, and they do often, say Pine Ridge, or a major intersection, I would be able to immediately attend to that. So that really is the cause. We're facing the same issue as the contractor, and that's the reason we've been granting them days. They're really not behind schedule because we put a stop work order on the project until such time. I can't make the contractor deliver something that we can't deliver ourselves.
No, I understand it. I understood exactly why we did the stop order and why we did it. But I remember when I asked, it was not you. Well, you didn't clarify. It was a spare one, not saying that either one of the projects had gotten a controller. And you had to, because the school was opening in August, you loaned them a controller. Well, when I initially talked to you, it sounded like you had one that came in and you had to,
No.
roll the dice and say, well, they're getting it, not you. So
My apologies.
I just,
that
all
wasn't
right.
the case, yeah.
But this is a perfect example that we're waiting on traffic controllers for years, these
Year,
control
some,
boxes.
yeah.
So, I get it. So, thank you.
Yeah, let's take a break to 10:45. So, thank you.
8 minutes?
Chair, you have a live mic.
All right, Jay, let's pick up where you left off, sir.
Well, since there's only two of us, we can get a lot more done.
All in favor?
There's a third moving in as we speak. Good afternoon. Once again, Jay Ahmad, I'm your transportation engineering for record, and continuing with my presentation. This section of the presentation, we completed the design aspect of my world and design and our folks' world. We hire consultants to do the design, and we contract with them. And I just neglected to show you what the product of a design is. And I have it right in front here if you could take a look. These are plan sheets. These are actually for Veterans Memorial, what the contractors out there constructing. They were designed by the professionals that we hired and produce that kind of volume of when you see a value or a number to our contract negotiations, it's a lot of work. I've done it in years in my past life, producing a set of plans that are buildable and hopefully minimize change orders or claims is our objectives in that first phase of design. Moving on to in-house design. As I mentioned earlier, we do have a small section of in-house design group that is targeting immediate need, for example, or like shoulder improvements. We've done a bunch of them on Immokalee, on Oilwell Road, on all over the place. We have traffic signals where we needed them. We can't go to a procurement and hire consultants. By the way, the process of procurement, and it's by state statute, that CCNA that Jeff was talking about, is a lengthy process. It's not overnight. You go through that process, and procurement would tell you it takes roughly 8 months. It could take more. You know, if you get stuck in negotiations, the consultant doesn't agree with you, you'll prolong that negotiation and being able to get to that design level and start showing plans that can be constructed. So this in-house team, we have 3 project managers, professional engineers in that team, 1 project manager that manages local agency participation projects. It's actually a regular project manager that manages smaller sidewalk projects, those grant project. It's a program we get lots of money from the state on, and we manage it through this section. We do sidewalks and smaller projects. And I get to the conclusion. In here, the current in-house team is ideal for those smaller projects, not the capital improvement projects. And as I showed you in one of the slides, the number of disciplines that you need to produce a very large project, from hydraulics to drainage to structures, all these disciplines, highway, much less in a smaller projects. You add the left turn lanes, you may need somebody from drainage, you may need survey, and the manager of this unit is actually a licensed surveyor. This unit sign and seal their plans, and that is required by state law, that a project that goes to construction must be designed in accordance with a professional engineer certification. And less risk, as it's not bridges, it's not significant projects, but yeah, definitely the risk still in there, and if our county manager assured me that we have liability, the team, that we have liability for those folks' insurance, that when they sign and seal, and if somebody sues you for, they get sued for not doing a bad job sometimes, and it could happen. So we have risk insurance, and the idea is saving time, get the projects done quickly. And that's really the end of the in-house team. It's a small team. We get approximately $2 million in safety improvements. We use those strategically where we have a list of 30 projects. There's a safety committee, encompasses the sheriff, staff, and other departments, and they look at, okay, anybody has list of things. We look at collision diagrams, we look at crashes throughout the county, and we identify smaller projects that have high value of attack and safety. If you have a question, I'll be happy to answer, or I can go to the CEI portion of my presentation, the construction engineering inspection.
Keep going.
Okay, thank you. Now, construction engineering inspection, we are governed by the Florida Department of Transportation. We use the procedures, manuals in designing projects and in inspecting projects. There is a whole list of items that the FDOT does and require on projects. And frankly, we use the design standards and specifications, so we must comply with the testing. There were questions on testing. These are and I'm not going to go read them all, but this team and Matt Thomas behind me he has a team of approximately 2 licensed he's the only license. He has 2 project managers and 7 inspectors. And the 7 inspectors currently dedicated to Vanderbilt Beach Road extension. So in my following slides, we'll be talking about, this is maybe an area if the board wishes to increase staff and target certain projects, we can certainly do it in-house. They plan review, they attend pre-bid meetings. Now, they carry the project. Once they get these plans designed and signed and sealed by a professional engineer, that's a handshake for the construction team, the inspection team. They start the procurement process for open purchase order, pre-construction meetings. Every day there is a daily report documented, and we pay per items installed. This team, in our world of FDOT, we itemize all, for example, curbing, we have it per linear feet. We know exactly how many linear foot estimated in the project. So every day, the field crew and the inspectors, they measure what was installed and paid. At the end of the project, we only pay for items we bought. We actually verified and tested, and it's in the field. They hold weekly, sometimes bi-weekly meetings to see progress of projects, delays, change orders, issues that arise with the project. They approve all the documents, any change orders, specification related. Make sure the testing I mentioned per FDOT, all buried components, for example, drainage or utilities that are part of a project in that capital project. We make sure that before you bury it, you make sure that the bedding, for example, on a pipe is not rock. It's a certain quality that is dictated by the specification, and we wouldn't allow a contractor to bury something that is not inspected and verified. We manage complaints by property owners. There's quite a few. If you live along a construction project, it's noisy, it's dusty, it's all the issues that arise with the project, and this team is the TAC team for that, and hopefully we do a good job in making sure our neighbors, when we build a project, is as less impacted by our construction. Every month, they prepare with the contractor the pay estimates, and the contractor get paid per items installed or per delivered material and so forth. And at the end, final payments gets done. And I heard some discussion about we should do lessons learned. We do team up, and we have, at the end of the project, we make sure that all the permits complied with. We have a team of meetings to see what lessons we learned from a project. Is a project that went bad, what was the issues? There may be claims that's outstanding on the project, and those claims could be valid, could be not valid. All the change orders we rejected, sometimes they come as a claim at the end of the project. And a claim is like a lawsuit, essentially, is trying to say, I'm going to sue you if you don't pay me. And it may escalate to that level, or we may be able to resolve it. Sometimes the county attorney gets involved early on and assists us with how we address and be able to defend later on. And I name a few projects currently. I mean, there are claims on almost every project. If you disagree with a contractor, they file a claim. And at the end of the project, we look at them and see if it's worth going to court or just be able to come to an agreement. Now, I talked at length about the design need and all these expertise that are needed to do a design project, to produce those plans. This world is a little bit different. It needs certification. So a certified inspector, for example, can take all these certification, and these are mostly done by FDOT certification. There's IMSA, there are other outfits that teaches maintenance of traffic to make sure that the contractor put a safe work zone. Those are certified folks that get on this project. But a certified inspector can be certified in earthwork, in concrete, certified in signals, in all these fields. So unlike a structural engineer, for example, they're pretty much kind of specialty. They specialize in doing bridges and walls and structure, traffic design signals and making sure traffic flow. The highway, similar. So those expertise kind of narrowed down in the design, where in here you could actually have an inspector certified in all these fields that we talked about. There may be bridges that would be excluded because you need specialized PE to sign and seal that they actually visited the project and made sure that the project was built in accordance with the design plans and specification. So a certified inspector is not a lengthy PE requirement. It could be not even a college degree. They come from trades, mostly the superintendents. They're, yes, on some specialty you need, like in Matt's world, in water and sewer, Matt McLean, and utilities, there are needs for certified professionals at a higher level than what I've just described here. Okay, now this is an example of in-house. Like I said, this is not a new topic to us. We have been doing in-house CEI, and I appreciate this discussion because it really sends the message to our folks and to the public and that we are stewards of their taxpayers. The taxes that they pay. Here's an example of projects, maybe a dozen or so, and the construction value of the project, and the best, again, it's not to the last penny. This may have to be done by OMB or to see if these values, this is kind of the cost. We looked at the staffing and the overhead and all their expenses just in a generic terms, and we came up with this CEI in-house cost, and it averages between 5 to 7, and again, not all CEI are created equal. We're an FDOT CEI that requires us to be on the job to make sure the measurements of construction is done and the quality, and we get what we paid. So it's about 5 to 7 doing it in-house. Now, the next slide is we have outsourced a lot of projects, and we outsource for many reasons, not including cost, but, do we have the staffing? Currently, as I mentioned, we have 1 PE and 2 project managers and 7 inspectors. And the demand for those inspectors on different projects is basically man hours. How long you need to put a CE inspector on a project is really what dictates the cost. So here's an example of a project that were outsourced, and we're averaging in FDOT type world, in my world, is 11%. And on a smaller project, local agency participation, grant type projects, those are intensive in interviewing every worker on the job, the Davis-Bacon Act, making sure you follow all the requirements of the grantor, and it gets very expensive. It gets close to 20%. And this is pretty much what FDOT is facing, and we checked with them what their price, what their experience. They're usually between 12 to 20% on their different projects.
Jay, on these things that we outsourced, looking back on it, and this goes to Commissioner Hall's point about, can we get more bang for our buck doing things in-house with the expertise we have? Obviously, some of these projects are huge, so they jump out at me as probably not. But are there any things on here that, looking back on it, maybe we could have pulled in-house? Because, I mean, you sit here and it shows that it's 20% of the project, and when we do it in-house, it's 5%. So are there things on here that, you know, in the end, it was something we probably could have added to our in-house list? Or you think we you know, and I'm sure, as is always said in this room, we could always look back, you know, that kind of thing, and, you know, we don't have a time machine. But are you continuously looking to add to the in-house list on things that we could more easily absorb in-house to save the dollars?
Thank you for that question, and that is essentially what I'm leading to with the conclusion. It's
Okay.
really your policy can do, or you know, can we increase staff? Yes, we can save some funds. Is the program, you know, we rely on impact fees and surtax lately. You know, I use the example, and I've been here too long maybe. I use the example in 2006, and maybe Amy, correct me if she was in charge of the impact fees. In 2006, it was $74 million of impact fees collected for transportation. In the downturn of the economy in 2010, maybe don't quote me exactly on the year, I think it was under 5. And it's, you know, the taxation that we have, and this is maybe something you look into, is you cannot count on the funding to come if the economy, if the housing stopped, and you start hiring a lot of people. Then, like I said, when we have staff, we start looking, okay, we have additional staff that can help you countywide. We reach out to the county manager or reach out to other departments, and we lend folks of CEI to those. So that is the balance that Commissioner Hall mentioned. It ought to be a balance. It can't say, I'm going to do all these projects, and it has to be a balance that I can't keep these folks busy beyond maybe 5 years.
But before we hire additional people to absorb some of these, you know, and I guess the easy answer is you're gonna say no. Everybody in house is max. They couldn't take on one other project. But I think our challenge here is, you know, we want everybody working to the fullest. You know, we only have so much money to spend, and, you know, there could have been a big dollar savings on some of these projects if it had the ability to be taken in-house, if it was going to absorb risk, if it was going to do all the other things that your team and your expertise would say, hey, could we do it? Yes, here's why we don't want to do it. We get that. So this is just more of an open conversation. There's a few smaller projects on here that, you know, I don't know if the juice would have been worth the squeeze hiring an extra person to pick up 3 or 4 of these, but my question is, could 1 or 2 of these, looking back on it now, been pulled in-house and probably handled with the staff that we have, just by, you know, I want to say working a little harder, but, you know, managing things a bit different, or, and this isn't an attack on anyone, just trying to figure out the best use of the staff.
No, it's a great question. The answer is, of course, yes. If you add more staff to do additional projects, you could have taken.
No, but I mean with current staff, is your testimony there, so to speak, is that current staff is maxed beyond anything additional that they can do, and that in order for us to pull stuff in house, we'd have to do, like what Commissioner Hall alluded to. Hey, you know, maybe hire 1 more person, but in the end, you do the math, and it was worth it. We invested this amount of money, and we saved, you know, this amount.
It really, and I hate the word.
But it's hard to find that person.
It depends on what are we assigning that folks do, because we do this all the time, and if there's low activity on a project, we take them and let's say our in-house team that is designing smaller project, we put them on those projects. They still need to be inspected and making sure that we pay per items installed. So the answer is, of course we can, if there are, but to be dedicated to a project that have a duration like these, almost 2.5 years, that would be a difficult task.
Okay.
So here's a summary of, you could sense the summary that I have here. In-house CEI expenses ranges in the FDOT world, in facilities, for example, and because they rely on the building permits, you know, and the building department, they have inspectors from the building by the building code to inspect certain aspects of a vertical construction. In our world, we're watching every activity and making sure we're getting what we bought. So our range of CEI is between 5 to 7% in-house. outsourced CEI, as you've seen in that sample, is roughly about 10 to on lab project. Not all projects. It's only the lab project that seem to have that high level of threshold of 20, or the grant type project. These are exactly FDOT type levels. FDOT, when we reach them, what do they do? Actually, this subject came maybe, like I said, this subject comes and goes. We've done a study in 2020. FDOT had projects under $5 million that they would do it in-house. And we checked again, and they stopped that practice. They do outsource everything on CEI, unlike the design aspect of the project. That's to your question. Sample of potential CEI staffing. What do we need to staff this capital program? I have 22, actually part of your 2024 budget. In the AUIR, there's a list of the large capital projects. It's over 22, and I know our folks in utility have similar, over $492 million worth of construction. And maybe I pause here because, we're dealing with engineering and CEI engineering or technicians. The majority of the cost for a project is not engineering or CEI. It's the construction. Take Vanderbilt Extension, $153 million, and maybe the design was 10, say 12%, and the CEI, we're doing it in-house. It's costing us, this is the estimate right now. We have a dedicated 5. It will end up 7 eventually, very shortly, because they're, getting into gear, and it's almost a year in construction. So the construction is where the money is. I mean, yes, CEI we could save, but it's not the, when you look at, I know that I presented this before the productivity committee, and they had a spreadsheet of costs that the county is doing, and it's substantial. We probably over $1 billion of worth of projects in the county, but that's not engineering. Yeah, all of that will be engineered, but most of it is in the construction, and that's up to the we go out to procurement gets bid to a qualified contractor, and congratulations here, team construction, you got contractor A to do your work, and good ones you don't struggle as much, bad ones you just that white hair comes from those things. That, of course, age too, but there's a lot of issues. Try to get a project in your house, a small project or a big project. Construction has issues. There's not always an agreement with a contractor on quality, and an agreement on the time, and agreement on the production rate, and those issues comes about. But going back to the CEI staffing, we're looking at 4 times the current staffing level if I do this sample. To say, let's say you made a decision, let's go CEI, all our capital projects. Now you got to have a substantial increase in staffing. Here we're looking at 37 for those projects. And again, it's about $258 million worth of construction. So here's the pros and cons, and for the benefits of listening to this, there is definitely a savings of doing it in-house, provided that you have work for those folks after a project ends, because it's all based on time allotted to that project. If the project goes longer and you don't get into another project, then those savings kind of diminish. And what we're finding in our world of CEI, we do finish projects on time better than what we do when we hire CEI. We have better communications. We make sure that issues are resolved early. And frankly, not to mention ethics or anything, but CEI job ends at the time we finish the project. So there may be some of that. I can't put my hands on it, but there is definite savings in better communication. And with more flexibility with in-house staff to move to other projects during downtime, is what you folks been talking about, is can we use these folks somewhere else? Yeah, we have, and we've done that when there is a downturn, maybe, and we've done a project in Immokalee for our folks in utilities that needed CEI. I mentioned projects in stormwater. We've lent folks that if there's a slow time, we do that. The negatives of this, I mentioned it, to manage that current pipeline of, you need 4 times the staffing that you have, and you can't just add one person unless it's a smaller project and say, yeah, most of these projects will require 4 or 5, 6 people to inspect on a daily basis and a project manager. So you would have to hire a group, a team of possibly 5 to 7 people to go from a project to a project. You can't just hire one person. There is overhead costs of vehicle, office space, IT, those kind of costs that I've added that in the cost, some of that, not office space, but IT and a vehicle maybe, and some of those expenses. But there is definitely a cost there. And the biggest one is the work program can shift, based on impact fees, based on your policy. I remember, and I've been here long enough, I remember when the downturn in the economy and the impact fees stopped coming, what happened is projects got canceled. Golden Gate Boulevard, for example, they just moved out to future years, both phases. And by the way, we did those projects in-house with the staffing that we have. It was a downturn. We'd be able to put those folks in a project. And I got to tell you, they are just as qualified as any other consultants. And maybe better. They're not, we train them, we pay for their training, and we make sure that we do our job right. So if you change your work program, if the economy, due to whatever reason, impact fees reduction, I've seen that too, and projects you can't fund. So here's the conclusion. Need to find a long-term financial healthy balance. And the potential savings is there. And we recommend that, maybe if you are thinking it's not a dirty word anymore to grow staff, maybe in smaller teams through the year, just kind of test it out. Right now we have 10, possibly get another team to do a project or 2 based on what's coming next, and test it out. And it may not be valid for every department because, like I said, you try to get into Matt's world, Matt McLean's utility, you need different specialty and expertise and certification, PEs, where in my FDOT world I can get, and these are not jobs that are hard to find workers for. There's a lot of construction workers that have been in the industry, and you look at the team of construction inspectors, they very experienced in construction, and they know how to test for quality, and they've been with FDOT or other CEI consultants, outsourced consultants. Matt, we just stole him from Hartsey in Hanover, was with a consultant. He was on the project on 951 US 41 when it was built years ago with Atkins. We got him here, and he left, and we got him back. But Steve Ritter, some of you know, he retired, and now we have a new leadership, young leadership, hopefully carries the torch out in the future. And I think this is where I'm stopping here. I'd be happy to answer any question.
Commissioner McDaniels is
Yes,
next.
and I have a question for you, and it comes back into what you said earlier about the most expensive portion of any particular project is not the engineering side, it's the construction side. So how can we, or have we explored incentive pay to contractors to come in on time and under budget, and compensation for that? And is there an effective way for that to be accomplished?
We have actually contracted one project, now it's years ago, where we put an incentive. It's like $3 million if you finish on time. It was a critical project. And what happened at the end of the project, frankly, and I stopped implementing that, there were delays, days, and of course they're always blaming the county for those, we caused this. He dumped water, in this case, dirty water into a wetland and created delays, but he blames us that, hey, it was something in the contract. We ended up at the end agreeing, but at the end he filed a claim to get this contractor on Rattlesnake Hammock Road to get this $3 million, the incentive, because it wasn't their fault. FDOT, I know, they use it when sensitive projects, and it depends who the contractor you get. If you get, they implemented and successfully implemented FDOT I have just not had a good experience in my prior life in this incentive, so we haven't really implemented since that project experience.
So as a thought, that and again, it all has to be done extremely transparently with as much information, measurables and milestones in place to compensate for on time and at or under budget to be able to enhance attraction of good contractors, allow them to be able to essentially make more money while we're doing projects. I'd like to see us move in that direction, if it's at all possible. I know it can be cumbersome because people take advantage of virtually any circumstance, but I'd like to see us move in that regard. Now, my other comment that I had, it had to do with the previous conversation that we had here. And this is, this board, we're the elected complaint department. We really don't hear about all of the good. Crystal, I pushed one of her buttons, and I followed it up or started it off by saying that we pay thousands of bills a day, but we only hear about the ones that are delayed or set aside or there's an issue that comes about. I think, and I'm going to cite an example that transpired on the TDC recently with the company that we have managing Paradise Coast. They were hesitant to come forward and say and talk about their successes for fear of being braggart. And so I think maybe an enhancement of communication with regard to the projects that we have, all of the projects that we have, and where we're at, where successes that we're meeting with, and then strifes that we're meeting with at the same time, so that we can hear the pros and the cons, the goods and the bads, and we don't just hear about the bads. We hear about everything necessarily, and an enhancement of that communication, I think, would be hugely beneficial.
Well taken. Thank you.
The last point I'm going to make is this is a workshop. This is an opportunity for us to speak and have discussions as to how we're conducting our business. And it's certainly not meant, and the chair has said it several times, we're not throwing arrows at anybody. We're all just looking for ways that we can do what we do and do it better. And it's not except for Ed Finn, we're not picking on anybody.
Understood.
I would say there's a difference between throwing arrows and just putting a spotlight on things and learning, so a lot of good conversation here. Got a couple of other commissioners lit up. Commissioner Colwell, sir, the floor is yours, and then Commissioner Hall, you're next, sir.
Thank you, Chairman. Hey, Jay, I have to confess in front of everybody here that when I was a young man, I got out of the United States Army, and I needed a job before I was going to night school for criminal justice. And a family friend says, hey, I can get you a job with Mellon and Dick Corporation in Pittsburgh. They're building the new international airport in Pittsburgh. I'm like, all right. So they got me in, and I fell into the quality control department. So I had the opportunity to kind of learn on the job. Young guy right out of the Army, didn't have a whole lot of experience. And it was funny because you had that page there, and 4 of those things on that page I'm qualified to do. The concrete inspection, asphalt inspection, earthwork inspection, and nuclear Troxler operator. You guys might know what that is. So quality control, and the whole idea of this workshop for me is that let's look at ways to save money. You know, and I worked with 5 guys. We had a civil engineer that oversaw us, and it was not uncommon us to do 2,000-yard pours a day. You know, our dirt guy was out ahead of us doing Troxler work, testing soil samples. You know, and we talk about in-house work, like you have sidewalks, things like that, aprons. How much of that do we do in-house? I mean, do we do every aspect of that in-house?
Yeah,
So we do all the testing, like slump testing, cylinder testing, all that stuff for the concrete.
we decided actually is we hire the inspectors for quality control, making sure the pay is what, you know, we're getting what we paid for. The testing part, and FDOT does the same thing nowadays. They call it verification testing. It's VT testing is essentially the densities for asphalt, the compaction for dirt and lime rock and all that stuff. We outsource it on projects that we do in-house. So there is still that element of outsourcing as
Okay.
part of our in-house design group.
I guess where I'm getting at is, you know, I was a young guy, didn't really know anything, and I learned on the job. You know, I was a soldier that was thrown out in the world, and, you know, like I said, 5 of us worked there for 3 years, and we stayed ahead of that project from setting precast, 3-point beam press testing, compaction, you know, pressure test on concrete, you know, and I mean, is there a chance that a lot of this, I don't know how much we would save down the road?
Not
to-
a huge saving for the VT testing part. It's where CEI, and I get onto my high horse again, CEI, in my view, is the best money spent on any project. It really is. If you bought a car, you would not just take it out of that, you made sure that I paid for the AC, I paid for the mats, I paid for all the options and the car itself. And the same thing, you bought, we spec, and that's what we're buying. We spec what we want. And the only way to ensure that we get what we want, and I got zillion examples, the best contractors would possibly, their labor may be making a decision not to follow, but they do not follow at times. And I'll give you an example since you asked. We were doing Collier in a Green Bridge. We spec'd a special concrete for that bridge foundation because the water has salinity and we need to make sure that the bridge lasts 75 years. And we had an inspector at night. They have the steel done, the rebars, everything set, the forms ready to pour concrete. They brought the concrete and, the truck of concrete, about 30 of them, had tickets, and that's one of the few times I got called at night. And the inspector says, these guys are giving me like 3,000 to 4,000 PSI where you spec 5,000 to 6,000 PSI, a pound per square inch. And I said, don't accept it. This is easy. You'll end up with a poor quality project. So the contractor, we can't stop the contract. We can't call the sheriff and say, hey, he's doing a bad specification. We documented, we made sure that if you do it, you're taking a risk. So he did. He poured all the 30 trucks plus more that kept coming at night. And we start testing the concrete after it's cured. Certainly enough, it's not going to reach that level. We hired a specialist in this field, and they came, and the designer, and they came say, no, basically what you're doing, you reduce the life of that bridge from 75 years, possibly 30 years. So you're not buying a 30-year bridge. You bought a 75. It's up to you. It came to me. It's my decision. So we made him take it out. It's close to $400,000 of concrete and steel, time delays, and a great contractor. It wasn't a bad contractor. Actually, I'm not going to mention the name, but it was one of the leading contractors in bridge design, bridge construction. So my theory on CEI, do CEI, because you may not get what you paid for.
Commissioner Hall.
So I just want to offer some things. You know, you've heard the old saying, I'm going to throw it a little bit on the wall and see what sticks. So one of my thoughts are maybe thinking outside the box a little bit. Take the Naples Park project. It's a big project. And I think there's 20 streets in there? So it's basically the same job repeated 6 or 7 times. I mean, they do 2 streets at a time. We've paid for CEI services in there, and I was on the very first street on 110th when they began.
My son was as well. I lived that project too.
Okay, so, you know, and they struggled a little bit in the very, very beginning, but once they found their rhythm, they were clicking. It was like a well-oiled machine. And so my thoughts are maybe instead of going forward with CEI and the contractor, maybe we could throw a little bone at the contractor to do his own thinking. Because he's familiar with the project, he knows where he knows exactly what's there, what's expected, and where he gets in if he gets in a bind, he can call county staff and they can work some things out. So that's just one of my thoughts. Another one is maybe to have staff do in-house design and CEI on time-sensitive projects so that we're not relying on somebody else dragging their feet. And then we would provide the guidance to do that. Number 3 would be to make an effort to move all quality assurance and quality control in-house for construction and do that without increasing staff. Not for the CEI, but for the construction of things. And lastly, hire CEI, and you mentioned this, hire it on a case-by-case basis to be approved by the county manager for things that, like you just said, that are not cost-effective for us, as in testing. So those are just some thoughts that I had going forward.
You want me to answer that? Basically, on your no CEI, again, you get what you pay for, and respectfully, we disagree on that, obviously. I think it's the best money spent on any project, and I'm repeating myself.
Yeah, I'm not saying not to do it. I'm just saying where we can on time-sensitive projects, use the in-house CEI.
Okay. On time-sensitive, yeah, that could be a decision by the board. All these time-sensitive, let's do CEI by in-house forces. You hire 5 to 7 people per team or less if the project needs less. I concur with that if that's a decision of the board to increase staffing. Just make sure that they have work and, the policy is kind of stable. That's the back end of that. If you decide, let's not do surtax money, for example, and I'm not advocating one way or the other because you gave me surtax and no staffing. So if you do no, it's been a taxing to the staff that's been doing it. We outsource certain things to be able to accomplish and do it in a timely fashion. The other ones, and I wrote them and I can't read my hand, in QA by in-house staff, it's the same result and conclusion. You are agreeing essentially on a project-by-project basis, tested it out. It takes time to hire and get in motion with a team. And of course, the additional staffing would have to have, vehicles for inspection. They go to the project directly, that kind of thing. So do not do CEI. I don't support that. I mean, at least I'm one voice, and I think my team would probably say the same. I think you got to know what you bought. You got to pay it correctly. You got to make sure it's done per specifications and per the design and the intent of the plans. As you could tell, we spend a lot of money on design plans, and if you're not going to really make sure that those plans are implemented in the field, it would be they will not be implemented in the field.
But if you had a time-sensitive project and our recommendation was try to pull all of those in-house as much as possible to save money and have a sense of urgency, but you didn't have the staff to do it. Like you said, it takes so much time to hire. So if you said, sure, we could pull it in-house, but I need 5 more people. If it was time sensitive, the project would expire before you could get the employees. So that's one of the frustrations, or one of the challenges is a better word, that you're under, correct?
Yes.
Is that there are projects that sit on the sheet here that are doable in-house, but you don't have the people to do it, and it takes longer to get the expertise and hire them on staff than paying a bit more. That's the struggle we're under. You know, I think our direction is
This is our
obviously
estimates of what you would need for roughly each project.
right.
And, 3.5, because some person like the project manager could manage 2 projects.
But you need 37 more people to do all that. So
For all of these. But if you take, let's say, which one is a sensitive,
Mm-hmm.
time sensitive in this sample, that could be done, of course.
Mm-hmm.
But you need that Leo, when you start planning it way earlier, not,
Right.
at the time, okay, I need this.
Okay. I don't see anybody else lit up here unless Commissioner Saunders. It looks like you're reaching for your button.
Just after he's finished, I had
Okay, sir.
one request.
I'm finished, sir.
think you're done,
Yeah.
yeah.
All right. Mr. Chairman, we have 2 members of the Productivity Committee that are here with a very short presentation.
Okay.
And I know they've got to leave, and I'm wondering if we could have them make their presentation
absolutely.
now. We have Melanie Miller and Mike Lister. They were both on the Productivity Committee, and they wanted to spend a few minutes. The Productivity Committee has actually been looking at this engineering issue. It was somewhat interesting, I think, at the last meeting. They had pretty much a lot of the same report that was just made at this meeting, and they wanted to give you a little bit of an update on their activities. And also, Commissioner Hall, just so you know, I did speak with Larry Magel concerning the issue of hiring a firm to evaluate zero-based budgeting for the county. What he suggested, and I think is a good idea, is that once the county perhaps selects 4 or 5 firms going through the Florida Association of Counties and the League of Cities, that committee could actually interview those firms and rank them for the commission, as opposed to trying to find the firms themselves. So
That's what I had in mind. So
Okay,
that's-
so I'll get that in motion. But these folks here want to talk a little bit about some of the activities of the Productivity Committee, especially as it relates to the engineering. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yep. Okay, let's go.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Saunders, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Mike Lister, and Melanie Miller's across the room. Melanie put together this PowerPoint. I just want to briefly state that thank Commissioner McDaniel for, when he was first elected, reinstituting the Productivity Committee. That smaller committee reviewed stormwater and the county hearing officer. And then Commissioner Saunders, I was chairman of that initial group. Commissioner Saunders approached and said, don't you think we need to go back to what the original Productivity Committee did when it was 11 people and you could spread the wealth around and have some subcommittees? And so we've expanded to that, and I think that's working very well. As you mentioned, Larry Magel is our chairman, and I'm the vice chairman. This is great timing that we're having, and thanks again to Commissioner Saunders for mentioning that. Why don't you come at our last Productivity Committee, and we were looking at in-house, out-house, which is a passion for one of our members, and so we've started looking at that. So thank you for the opportunity, and I'll turn it over to Melanie, who did the PowerPoint.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you for having us. Happy to be here today to share and tell you what the Productivity Committee has been up to, share our work. So first, we wanted to kind of take a look back. The committee has done a diligent review over the last year and had a lot of discussions with Parks and Recreation Department and Facilities Department. That resulted in various process improvements and enhancements. Some of those include custodial services, looking at that and finding efficiencies in oversight and process, defining clear delineation of responsibilities between facilities and Parks and Recreation Department, and then we considered a strike team approach that wasn't implemented. It wasn't quite feasible and efficient. And then we did work with Parks and Rec to redesign the 311 signs and implement those as well. And enhance the work order tracking for Parks and Recreation and through facilities. So that's some of the work we did looking back. I wanted to share, just as, I've been on the committee for almost 2 years. Michael's been on there a lot longer. We do have a very diverse committee, and I kind of wanted to talk at that at the end. It's really an asset to the county. Our current work, we continue to work on establishing a Friends of the Park program. Again, within the county parameters, there's already an avenue for that, and we're trying to kind of take that to the finish line and work within the clerk of courts and some ideas that the Commissioner Saunders had on how to get that going. Then we've also, as we've been discussing today, as Michael said, it's quite timely, we started conducting a thorough analysis regarding construction and engineering services, insourcing versus outsourcing. We want to identify areas where the approach is most appropriate, establish criteria to guide future evaluation and decision-making process, and consider some of the factors brought up today regarding feasibility. If you can't hire the staff, it's hard to implement that. And as Mr. Ahmed discussed earlier, this topic is an important topic for the county, both management and the taxpayers. Then looking at future work, we'd look to and welcome and appreciate if the Board of County Commissioners has feedback and guidance of any specific topics for the community to review, specifically the topic we're looking at now, outsourcing versus insourcing, and perhaps other areas of county operations. As Commissioner Saunders and Commissioner Hall just talked about, it sounds like there's some zero-based budgeting topics we can address. And then I just wanted to share, myself, we have a very diverse committee. I live in District 5. I professionally serve in District 2 as Vice President of Pelican Bay Foundation, serve as Treasurer of Star Ability Foundation, and my husband and I own a small business. I'm one of 11 Productivity Committee members that really represent and take their role very seriously and the responsibility that we hold in looking and working with the staff. I also wanted to share our gratitude to the staff, the management with the county. We have had some really good, transparent conversations. The staff have really opened up and shared with us, worked with us, Tanya, Alima, Crystal Kenzel, Ed Fenn, Amy, James Williams, and numerous other staff. And Commissioner Saunders is always there to support us, and many staff show up. And so it's just really nice for me, being on the committee less than 2 years, to witness the collaboration and the back and forth that we have with the county staff. And it's really been nice to have those relationships and transparent dialogue and collaboration. So that's our work.
Comments? Commissioner McDaniel.
And this is just a quick question for.
Sure.
Actually, I'm gonna go to her. Just what can this board do to help the Productivity Committee be more productive?
I think just funnel through Commissioner Saunders areas and feedback that you want us to kind of dive into, areas that you'd like to see us dig a little deeper into. And we have our own ideas. We talked about transportation, but really didn't go down that path. So if there's any direction, pointing us in the direction that you'd like us to dig a little deeper on, that would be appreciated. Also, just interaction with the management and the commission is great to share. This is a great opportunity to share and show you what we're working on and the committee's responsibility, how they really dig deep. And we've had lots of conversations over the last year with Parks and Rec, and they were very patient with us. And so that's just really appreciated.
Okay. And you, Mike, do you have any particular things that we as the board can do to better the efforts of the Productivity Committee?
Well, I think Melanie touched on it. The
if you remember when I think when we expanded it to 11, I think at the next Productivity Committee meeting, we had 3 commissioners present. And we asked them, what are your priorities? And all 3 of them in their top 3 priorities mentioned Parks and Recreation. So we've spent over a year on Parks and Recreation looking at the various aspects of that. And so that was kind of a prompt from the 3 commissioners that said, boy, we ought to take a look at that. And I think that we've really improved. We've served our purpose with Parks and Recreation. Are there others out there? This in-source, outsource discussion that you're having, we just began that discussion. Okay. So I think there's fertile ground there. And so I would just plead that if you have other insights like that, originally we talked about, well, maybe we just work through the county departments, department by department, which I understand is what the original Productivity Committee did that was established back in the 90s. We've just not gotten there yet because you've given us some things that we can put our arms around and I think serve a purpose. So,
from me to you, and I don't want to speak for the entire board, but I also want to open up the channels of communication. So, if bring your ideas and your thoughts as you're going through these processes to Commissioner Saunders so that he can bring it back to our board to get formal direction so that steering isn't coming from this board to you or vice versa, whatever that proper term is. So I want to hear from you folks as well. So if you see something that we can do by policy to make adjustments to better enhance your efforts, because that was one of the original premises of the Productivity Committee, was to engage the extremely knowledgeable community that we have and bring them in to better assist us in the overall operations of our government. So please, I want to open up the channels of communication.
Great, thank you. Well, thank you for having us.
Commissioner Saunders has a question.
Just real quick, I want to thank both of you for being here, and also thank the rest of the committee members. And I will say to the board, I've sat with a lot of different committees over the years, and I do try to make every one of the Productivity Committee meetings. These are folks that are well experienced in a whole lot of different fields, from finance to construction to government, to all sorts of areas. And they can certainly add a lot of expertise, and they really dig into the issues that they get into. So I wanted to thank the whole committee, especially both of you for being here today. I know it's you've had to sit here for a while, but I think it was educational for everybody to listen to our departments in terms of the engineering. So I think it was time well spent, and I know you're digging into that issue going forward. So thank you.
I just have a comment about committees in general, so it's not Productivity Committee, although I'm going to use you as an example. One of the things that was set up here is how we can help not only the productivity, but all committees. And so, I just want to stress, I think the number one way we can help them is by nominating the strongest candidates to these committees. Like you said, you got the Productivity Committee, an incredible amount of expertise. And at times we don't really get a lot of applications for these committees. And so, now I know that we all have newsletters and we're doing town hall meetings. I think just anything we can do to really shake the trees. I mean, I'm disappointed at times when I see 3 openings and 3 applications. So, and I think we've done a great job of saying, wait a minute, let's let it go another month, and then we shake the trees. But when it comes to Productivity Committee, I just discovered something working with Mr. Klatskow, that these are 4-year terms on the Productivity Committee. Is that true? I mean, most committees are. Is Productivity Committee 4 years?
I would have to look it up, sir.
Okay. I think do you know, Mike, is it 4 years that your committee members, when they get appointed, they serve for 4 years? Okay. But one of the things, I had a conversation with Mr. Klatskow. I had nominated somebody for the Productivity Committee, and then in my opinion, soon thereafter, they resigned, which isn't a problem. But, if you're resigning saying, wow, the meetings take a lot of time and I didn't realize it wasn't going to be conducive with my work schedule, that's something that you figure out before you apply. I mean, there's no big mystery on how often they meet and what it's going to take. But there's some anomalies. But I'll just jump to the end. One of the things I mentioned to Mr. Klatskow is, and I'll see if you all agree, but me personally, I found out by accident that somebody that I appointed and expected to serve a full term had prematurely resigned. And I would have liked to known that, obviously, from the person. That would have been the most responsible, mature thing. Commissioner, thanks for nominating me, but something has changed in my lifestyle or my work schedule, and that didn't happen. They had some people in reserve, so they were able to fill the seat, but through, just an accident, I found that out. So one of the things I mentioned to Mr. Klatskow is that if his office is made aware that there's any committees that have somebody that's resigned, or if there's a better way to sort of track it. I think as commissioners, if we've appointed somebody and whether it's a 2-year or 4-year term and they prematurely exit, that's something we would want to know, especially if it was somebody that made such an aggressive pitch to be on the committee, and then maybe they just wanted to serve for a certain shorter amount of time as sort of a nice resume bullet, and then they exit. We have had that happen on multiple occasions. And so in this particular case, this person had a track record of almost minimal time on 4 different committees, and then exited for the exact same reasons every time. And so I had mentioned to Mr. Klatskow, anything the staff can do to, and it's not to attack that person, okay, great, but we don't want to see sort of a track record of somebody who's applying and resigning quickly to sort of get a little bit of experience across different committees. But more importantly to that, I think we take our nomination process very seriously. And so knowing, not assuming that person was going to reach out to us in a mature professional way and say that they're resigning or they're about to resign, but the staff letting us know as well, because you might want to reach out to that person since you nominated them and said sorry it didn't work out or whatever, but then at least hey, that's a person that maybe you had a long conversation with and they were all excited to be on the committee, and then kind of kept it a secret that they were exiting out the back door prematurely. So the conclusion at the end is, how can we best help these committees nominate people that we feel confident are going to serve the full term, have the resume and the depth of experience, and then the committee's telling us, are we doing a good job? Is everybody on your committee a valuable contributor? I know when I was the commissioner representative of the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee, and now Commissioner Hall fills that role, but I was flabbergasted to walk into my first couple of meetings and find such a poor attendance rate. And then when I asked for a spreadsheet of all the people that were designated committee members, not people that were just showing up as part of being just citizens who wanted to attend, the absentee rate was horrific. Yet, most of these people had on their LinkedIn pages, oh, I'm a member of the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee. I do all this work for the county. And then we couldn't even take a vote because we didn't even have a quorum. And that was really disappointing. So we'll continue to stay plugged in with Mr. Klatskow, or if the staff is made aware of anything. And there again, it's not to throw a spear, but it's to shine a spotlight, and also to catch maybe some instances of where somebody might be sort of playing with the system a little bit to bounce around to some different committees, but then make an early, quiet, camouflaged exit, which is something that I don't think anybody up here respects. But I can't echo enough with the productivity. It sounds like it's much more than it ever was, and can really help us on a lot of things. So thank you, for your service. Okay, so now we'll go back to the last presentation, and then I know we've got some grab bag things at the end here that we want to talk about.
So commissioners, at this point, if you have questions for us overall, if you want to see the utilities presentation, it's going to follow much the same format as transportation. So I think Jay has given you a deep look into the CEI design and construction process. If that's generated any additional questions, or if you do want to bring Mr. McLean up, we can do that. Or if in the interest of time, if you want to take the public speakers, I believe we have 5. It is
for this topic. Or just 5?
They're just 5 speakers. It's not indicated by topic. It's just
okay. Let me just go back to your first comment. do you think the slides here, unless the commissioners feel differently, I won't say are redundant, but are a summary of what we've already heard, that the details in here aren't really I don't want to say they're not important, but we've already, through healthy discussion, kind of covered what's in here.
Yes, so I think that you will find that each of your groups are going to have some of the same ideas, the subject matter being different, but you've given us some ideas of things to look at. This is an evolving conversation, obviously. Some ideas of where we could bring suggestions to you to do things differently. So if you think that you want to just let us march out and bring back some ideas as this progresses. Obviously, we're going to be having further conversations with the Productivity Committee as well on this very topic. So it seems like these things are all now lining up to lead towards future direction. Maybe at the appropriate time to stop. We can always come back.
Absolutely.
Let us get our arms around what we talked about today and sort through that. Take the public speakers on whatever topics they might want to address, and we can go from there.
One of the slides, and we all have copies here, that's worthy of taking a look at probably after this meeting, is slide 44, and it's big projects in fiscal year 24, and it shows sort of the numbers, the stats, what, the percent of design versus construction, and, these are big ones: the mental health facility, Paradise Coast Sports Complex Phase 3, Big Corkscrew Regional Park, a new chiller plant. So, these are things that obviously would have been presented here, but I think we understand and kind of adjust all the details on here. But, if you look, the percentage of CEI versus construction is manageable. It's small, which is what we want. We don't want it to be ginormous, but I agree, unless the commissioners have a different sense of one of the things that might come from citizen comment, because I did talk to a few citizens about it, and I said, one of the beauties when you have a meeting like this is we're in the sunshine. So even though it's not something on the agenda, before we drop the gavel and exit a meeting, the commissioners can bring up everything. And I had an issue that came to me, and it probably came to some of the other commissioners, about our public libraries and an organization that we're a member of, and I just wanted to use this meeting to just give us information. It's probably not appropriate to vote on anything or anything like that, but we're here, take advantage of it, and there might be some other, topics as well. So, Mr. Miller, why don't we go to, it sounds like we're gonna get an assortment of public speakers, but, this room is for the public, so unless
Yes,
there's
sir.
any objection, let's go right to them.
Your first speaker is Richard Eckstein, and he'll be followed by Keith Flaw.
Morning, sir.
Morning, gentlemen. How you doing today?
Good.
I have a couple topics I'd like to talk about real quick. I'll be brief. The first topic is county pay. Public employees,
Sir, just pull the mic a little bit closer, just so there you go.
can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Public employees are underpaid. My suggestion is 150% pay increase across the board for all employees, public servants of the county. Anybody agree with that? Say aye.
Are you printing money? Are you printing money in the basement that we don't know about?
I'll get to that point in a second. I know everything's on a budget, but I have a suggestion to generate revenue for the county to cover the cost for the pay raise for all the county servants. They're underpaid and they're overworked and they're suffering, and I can sense it. So my suggestion is, why don't we just make all the golf courses, landscape companies, all buy a permit to spread fertilizer on our beautiful county every time they want to feed the plants. Anybody like that suggestion?
Well, it's not a debate. We're just
Oh,
here
okay.
for public comment.
The second one would be soil testing of all the soils before they purchase their permit from the county. And fertilizer testing would be a good place to start. Another problem is on Randall Boulevard in Mockley. I called the I called the DOT about the project progression, and they're like not answering the phone. And I tried to talk to a couple of the designers and get some input on the design of the Mockley Randall Boulevard flyover, which is way behind schedule. They haven't even submitted a plan, a design plan to the commissioners. I wish they would hurry up and speed that along because the road there is heavily traveled and it has too much traffic every morning. I think it was backed up like, I don't know, 600 feet from Randall up 8th Street. And my last note would be, can someone possibly in the county get a hold of Brightline and see if they'd be interested in doing a study on high-speed rail to the county? Anybody? Miami's got high-speed rail.
And that's something that I think is in their job jar, but it's something that has, I don't know if that was the actual company, but it's not something that isn't already in a lane of discussion. I mean, it's a big, that's a big one. It's not a matter of, we approve it and then all of a sudden they start building it.
Well,
but it is a topic of discussion from our MPO meetings.
I have a suggestion. Just half a cent sales tax to cover it, gentlemen. Half a cent. Vote on it. Okay. Thank you for your time.
Commissioners, Ms. Scott will check in with this gentleman regarding the transportation issues as well as the fertilizer. Those are all within her area. If Trinity can look to the back there, Trinity's in the back, she'll catch up with you, sir.
Your next speaker is Keith Flaw. He will be followed by Kate Zakella.
Good afternoon, or about to be afternoon. Keith Flaw, Collier County, Marco Island. I'm here to urge you to cut the ties with the American Library Association by removing ALA membership dues from the budget, as Citrus County and Hernando County have just done. The ALA has become notorious for its aggressive promotion of drag queen story issues, sexually explicit LGBTQ materials, etc. Last spring, the ALA elected Emily Drabinski, a self-proclaimed Marxist, as its president. Drabinski served as the keynote speaker of at the Socialism 2023 conference, in which she proclaimed publicly, and I quote, "Public education needs to be a site for socialist organizing. Libraries really need to do this also. They will be key in advancing the Marxist cause among our youth." Under Drabinski, the ALA has moved to push expansion of drag queen stories hour across the nation. Back in August, Kirk Cameron, who is the publisher of Brave Books, an amazing series, attempted to hold National Family Story Hour on August 5th in public libraries across the nation. The ALA held an emergency national virtual conference on how to deny access to block this event. Librarians were instructed, and again I quote, "Invent programming so that day's programming for the reading rooms is all filled up on that specific date." The ALA website devotes an entire page to resource links and toolkits for organizing drag queen involving gender fluidity. The growing list of county, in the interest of time, I'm going to skip. The ALA should be defunded not only because of Drabinski, and I say this because we've run into it you guys know I focus on K through 12 education across the state, because it is a left-wing organization that has been very involved in our school districts. Many of our media centers use the license within the various counties through the Board of County Commission to decide which books they're going to buy. We have a significant number, well over 150 books here in Collier County that we're objecting to, many of which are on the ALA supported list. So I know you can't take a vote today. I urge you on the 10th to take a vote to defund the ALA here in Collier County. We don't need this kind of garbage in our county. Thank you.
Your next speaker is Kate
Wait.
Zakella.
And I'm not sure if you're able to stay, Mr. Flaw, but we're going to have a presentation from our county library leadership to give us the background on the factual details of what that organization does for us, doesn't do, exiting, just for our, so we all hear it at the same time, because I think we've all got bits and pieces, so it might be something you want to hear. Go ahead, sir.
Your next speaker is Kate Sekela. She will be followed by Jamie Merchant. Just state your name.
My name's Jamie Merchant, and I want to thank Commissioner LaCastro for bringing up the American Library Association. Can you hear me? I feel like I can't even hear myself.
We can. Yeah.
Okay. As you may know, Hernando and Citrus counties have recently voted to pull their funding from the ALA, and I wholeheartedly support defunding this organization. As Keith has already said, the ALA and its current president have a history of promoting explicit LGBT materials and drag queen story hours while attempting to censor conservative voices like Kirk Cameron and Brave Books. Their destructive and discriminatory agenda harms children and violates Americans' First Amendment freedoms while undermining parental authority. Senator Marco Rubio and others have rightly called for cutting off government funds to the ALA and conducting a federal investigation into its discriminatory practices. Unfortunately, defunding the ALA only places a Band-Aid on a much larger problem. Lee County, which is just north of here, gives $0 to the ALA, and these explicit books are still very much available. So what you as a board need to decide is how to protect innocent children from accessing this material on accident, while also protecting the parental rights of those who see no harm in this. And I do believe if you look into Hillsborough County, their Board of County Commissioners have directed the library leadership and technology staff to come up with a plan to allow parents to opt their children out of borrowing or accessing materials with mature themes. So I think that that is a very neutral approach. While I may not, full-heartedly agree with it, it's a neutral approach. I do have a lot of documents from Senator Rubio articles, and if there's anything else that you need in support of this, I'm more than happy to meet with you all individually. You can reach out to me through Keith, or I think I might have put my contact info on this card. So, thank you.
I understand Kate Sekela has left, so we're going to go to our final speaker, which is on Zoom, Richard Arrico. Richard, you're being prompted to unmute yourself if you'll do so at this time. And Richard, are you there? You're being asked to unmute yourself. Perhaps Richard only wants to listen. He's not unmuting, sir.
Okay.
And that would conclude our final speaker.
Okay. County Manager, anything that you have?
Commissioners, if you'd like, we do have Tanya Williams here, and she does have information relative to our participation with the ALA, just so you can get the facts surrounding our relationship with the ALA.
Thanks.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. For the record, Tanya Williams, Public Services Department Head. I just want to give you a very high-level overview of how your Collier County Public Library Division operates in regards to the American Library Association. For the record and for your own educational purposes, the American Library Association's mission is to provide leadership for the development, promotion, and improvement of library and information services and the profession of librarianship in order to enhance learning and ensure access to information for all. The core values are listed there, ranges anywhere from access, and that's in regards from a public library perspective, and I can only speak on behalf of your public library. I cannot speak on behalf of the school library or any other specialized library. Access, confidentiality, and obviously there's 12 different values that the ALA subscribes to. Some key facts that you need to know concerning Collier County specifically. The Library Division is a current member of the American Library Association. We have been for many years. Our current annual membership cost is $1,565. It renews annually in January, so we are currently paid through the end of the calendar year. And our membership includes access to professional resources, publications, tools, training development opportunities, continuing education, which includes but is not limited to advocacy, legislation, grants, scholarships, conferences and events, education and careers, various tools, publications, and resources. Our specific benefit, we are not aggressively involved with the American Library Association, so our benefits really that we locally get from being a member is anywhere from a 50% reduction in conference registration rates, and then a 10 to 15% reduction in the cost of promotional materials and any professional materials. And those could be in the form of print books, ebooks, online courses, and trainings. Based on the current trends of recent events, I want to also make you aware of the following. The Florida Department of State Division of Library and Information Services is not a member of the ALA. We just received notification last week that beginning with the current fiscal year 23-24 grant cycle, the Florida Department of State will not accept any LSTA, Library Services and Technology Act grants, with project activities associated with the ALA. While Collier County does not generally apply for LSTA grants that would involve the ALA, Swiftland, which is our local library consortium, does. They help sponsor attendees to conferences. However, we have been made well aware that any LSTA grants are not to involve ALA activities. And as it has already been previously noted by the public speakers, Citrus and Hernando counties in the state of Florida have withdrawn their memberships in ALA. Hillsborough County, Tampa area is considering it. They have not made a recommendation to their board as of yet. Manatee is also considering it. What we are finding in the research is that generally the biggest pullout are coming from the states. Montana, there's probably about 5 states that have now pulled their state membership from the ALA.
When they pull their state membership, does that mean all the counties in that state then automatically, or they can make unilateral decisions in a county?
Jen, I can only speak for Florida. Florida has not been a member of ALA for a couple of years, Commissioner. For us, it's dependent upon each county, each municipality. Some of your public libraries, especially in Lee County, you've got 2 independent public libraries that exist within Lee County. So it's dependent upon that state's charter.
So in Florida, there's no state membership in this organization to pull because we're not a member of the state, is what you've just said. Okay. Is that your last slide, or
That's my last
Commissioner
slide.
McDaniel's lit up here. Go ahead, sir.
Two things, and it goes back to what Keith had to say. I would like, if you could, to give the list of books that you find to be not appropriate, so that maybe we could at least list those as an identification process to parents, so that they're made aware of circumstances that may not be so conducive for children to be looking at, number one. And then number two, my question is, what do we lose if we're not paying our dues to the ALA? Is that membership, or is that association with them that critical for our day in, day out operations of our library? We get commingled with the school district, and we don't have anything to say over the school district other than giving a recommendation. But what's your personal opinion with regard to the $1,500 or so that we pay in dues to the ALA?
The nominal benefits that we get from the American Library Association, it would not be missed.
That makes it pretty easy.
Ms. Patterson, I know that we spoke about this, and I said I was going to bring it up at this meeting. Is it possible to make this an agenda item on the 10th? Do we have enough notice to be able to add it to the agenda, right?
Somebody will walk it on.
Absolutely. So, I mean,
Yes, sir.
I asked it to be walked on because I knew we could only discuss it here and take input, but I think, either we got to make a decision or not. I've probably gotten a little bit more data because we've talked about it, and we've talked about it than maybe the other commissioners have, or maybe not. Maybe we all have digested a little something, but I'd like it to be on the agenda on the 10th, and we will make a command decision.
Yes, sir, not a problem.
Okay. All right.
Just for point of clarification, would that be to rescind our membership as of
Well, the consideration to
today,
do that.
or not to renew come January?
I don't know. It'll depend how the conversation goes. All that's on the table. Commissioner Saunders.
I just had a question for Commissioner McDaniel. I'm not sure I understood. You were asking staff to do something in reference to some books?
Yes.
I wasn't sure what that was.
Mr. Flaw said that there was a list of approximately 150 some odd books that had been found to have content that his organization felt wasn't really conducive for youth to be looking at. And so my suggestion was get that list and then have it provided to our staff so that if we chose to, we could at least give information to parents so that they can be edified as to what their kids are getting from our libraries.
Okay. The only reason I asked for some clarification there, I didn't want staff to go from here thinking they had to read 150 books.
No.
Determine their,
That was the recommendation. Keith said he had a list of 150 books. It's not our job to make that determination. Our job is to provide information, and if that information, if there is information, or if there is subject matter in those books that potentially could be inappropriate for certain age classes, we should at least make the parents aware of that.
And how do we do that? Do we post a list of the books, or staff is pretty busy, and I'm just trying to understand what it is we're going to be asking them to do, and how they're going to do that. Maybe that's an agenda item, but
Just for point of clarification, in regards to educating and making information available, in regards to regularly what's classified as banned books, we do have running lists of books that are regularly brought before boards, whether it's predominantly the public school system or boards in general, for reconsideration, and have been deemed, banned books. To Kill a Mockingbird is on that list, as well as many of the others that we were tortuously put through in school. So your public librarians do continuously educate parents. To say that it's right front and center on our website, no. That, if that is something that the board would instruct us to look at possibly doing, we will do that at your direction. So to both, yes, we can generate a list. I'm not sure in regards to the 150 title list that was mentioned earlier, if that was from the public school system, media centers, or if that was in relation to your actual public library. I do so also want to note for public record that in regards to visual materials such as DVDs, if you are a minor, you're not allowed to check anything out above a G rating without parental consent. So from a visual standpoint, we already have a mechanism in place that would keep minors from accessing anything above a G rating.
I think, and then I'll go to commissioners here. I think our main goal, may not be our only goal on the 10th, is to make a decision on this organization. I don't want to prematurely lean one way or another, but you already sort of answered one of my questions, was how long is our membership good for? And it sounds like we paid. It's about to expire. So I think if it was, like I said, I don't want to jump to the finish line, but if we decided that we didn't want to continue to be with this organization, I don't think we'd let the membership run its course. I think we would send a letter and say, we're no longer a member, so, keep our extra $15 for the last, month and a half or whatever it worked out to be. But either we sort of, do it or don't. If it's an organization we think that we haven't questioned, I think just letting it run out to the end of the calendar year is probably not the most responsible thing that we could do. Or not, I will say it's not the most aggressive thing that we could do. The most aggressive thing would be we end our membership immediately. I think that's what these other counties did. I don't think they decided to, at least what I read, let their memberships just expire and they weren't going to re-up. They sent a letter to the ALA saying we are no longer a member effective immediately. And I will just add for the 10th, Ms. Williams, a question I will have, and it'd be better for the 10th. If we are able to attend conferences and all these things because we're a member, my question would be, how many have we attended? Over the last, couple of years, don't need that answer now, but, a little bit of a deep dive. So we're making the best decision possible. I think our feelings about this organization and maybe what they've done and some things that some citizens have brought to our attention supersede if we've gone to some things. But I think if we hear, well, we only really went to one thing and we got a 10% discount, and it was, it starts to make us feel that a decision might be, pointing in a certain direction, and it's not imploding our service to our citizens, or it's not making a big change to the library. Anyway, having said that, I got two commissioners lit up, Commissioner Colwell and then Commissioner McDaniel.
I think maybe just to simplify the process, Commissioner McDaniel and Commissioner Saunders, I don't know if us creating these giant lists and trying to get them out to the public, and because you know how that works, maybe 50% of the public see it, 30% actually reads it. Can we just do it at the source where, this 150 books is like a request list? We have it posted in the library saying, hey, these books on this list, request to see them. Librarian, they keep them wherever they keep them. They're handed out. That way they're only being given to an adult. Or if an irresponsible adult leaves it out and little Bobby comes with his stack of books to check them out, this particular list is red flagged. So when they scan it, he's like, well, little Bobby shouldn't have this book. We take it back. Instead of, we could take care of this problem maybe in-house and not have to go through this giant production of trying to let parents know and oversee what their kids may potentially have in their hands. And just simplify it to that point where, just make it a simple poster when they walk in the library. If you're seeking this book, this is a request book, and you got to be an adult to request it, and then our librarian will bring it to you. I don't know. Just try to simplify it.
Commissioner McDaniel?
Yeah, and I'm not looking to make work by any stretch of the imagination, nor am I suggesting we ban any books. It's not my choice to pick what your kids get to read or don't get to read. It's not the government's choice to do those things. What Mr. Flaw or someone else may find offensive, you may not, and it's your choice to guide your children as you see fit to do. So my thought was not to make this a production, but to make awareness available that there may be content in these books to better edify the parents. That's all.
Okay. Commissioner Hall.
Just real quick, I love the idea of request only by an adult. And just for the record, if the speed of the group is determined by the speed of the leader of this ALA, I'm out. I'm all for being away from them.
Another thing that would be good on the 10th, because it was part of the discussion, I asked, how long has this person been the leader? And when is she leaving? And I was surprised to hear that this position turns over every 12 months. So part of our healthy discussion here to make educated decision, I'm agreeing very strongly to what Commissioner Hall said, but I don't want to prematurely go there, is before this lady took office, was there an issue at all with ALA, and did they just have somebody at the top that we may aggressively disagree with, but she's exiting in 30 days and they're about to put, you know, a Catholic priest or a nun in charge of the ALA. And I mean, I say that, you know, just sort of tongue in cheek, but, you know, that would be, is it the organization or it's the person? But I would agree wholeheartedly, when you have the leader sets the tone. Now, if she's exiting in a month, you know, was the tone before her amazing, wonderful, and we were all so proud to be be part of that organization. This is all for the 10th. This is all for the 10th. But anything else? Is it time to go around the room?
Yes, sir, we do.
Okay.
I believe Commissioner Hall's going to speak to it, or Commissioner Saunders, but we do owe you an update on the conversations about selecting a consultant or someone to help us with the beginnings of the zero-based budget. But I'll leave that to you for your discussion. You'd already touched on it briefly in prior comment. But before that, County Attorney?
Nothing, thank you.
Okay.
It's to you.
Okay, I'll go to the commissioner. I'll start with Commissioner Hall. Sir?
Good, thanks.
Pardon me?
I'm good.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Commissioner McDaniel?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Okay. Commissioner Saunders?
Nothing to add.
Commissioner Colwell?
I don't have anything else.
Did you all hear all the Jay, all the expertise that Commissioner Colwell has? And he's not very busy at times in this job. So if you can get him on some sort of training program to get him back up to speed, get him out there on the roads. Get him out there on the roads, right? I mean, if we can save some money, right? I mean,
certified nuclear.
I know. I heard he is a certified nuclear like physicist or something. Or
I could
test.
take 2 air meters at the same time.
Listen, great meeting, and you know, in conclusion, to Jay and the team and everybody else who's listening from the county, we can't stress it enough. Today wasn't about spears and rocks; it was about spotlight, and we're going to continue to do that, especially in light of the command decisions we made on the budget to ensure we're spending taxpayer dollars wisely. And I know we're all paddling in the same direction, so thank you for your efforts. And if there's nothing else, I think we're adjourned. Thank you, ma'am.